Chapter 874. Where were the snakes? Everyone looked at Han Yunxi, waiting for her answer. Han Yunxi was supported by Long Fei Yi with one hand and covered her mouth with the other. Her face was deathly pale, as if she would vomit if she opened her mouth. She couldn't speak at all. Long Fei Yi was the fastest. When he chased after them, Han Yunxi and the poison guards hadn't reached the bottom of the cave yet. He saw that the walls were densely packed with venomous snakes. They were so densely packed that he couldn't tell which snake's head and which snake's body belonged to which snake. They were all intertwined with each other. Their flat heads were densely packed together, and they were all sticking out their red tongues. It had to be said that Long Fei Yi almost vomited when he saw this scene. As soon as he saw them, they all leaped from the cliff towards Han Yunxi, wanting to attack Han Yunxi. At the same time, the poisonous snakes at the bottom of the cave continuously spewed poisonous gas upwards. Almost all of the poisonous snakes in the cave pounced on Han Yunxi. However, this scene only lasted for an instant. Before he could snatch the person from the poison guard's hands, all the poisonous snakes had disappeared without a trace. When he landed at the bottom of the cave with Han Yunxi, not a single snake was seen. He couldn't even scold Han Yunxi because she kept retching as soon as she landed. She was only feeling better now. Seeing that she was uncomfortable, his temper flared up. However, no matter how angry he was, he suppressed it and asked in a low voice, "You put them in your poison storage space. What happened to you?" Han Yunxi wanted to answer, but couldn't help but retch as soon as she opened her mouth. She hurriedly waved her hand, indicating for them to leave. Seeing that no one moved, she panicked. "All of you leave, quick. I can't hold on any longer. Quick." As soon as she finished speaking, she really threw up. It was a complete mess, but she didn't forget to wave her hand as she vomited, indicating for everyone to leave. "All of you, go up and wait," Long Fei Yi said coldly. He supported Han Yunxi and patted her back. He understood that too many people would only get in the way. Su Donglin and the poison guards didn't dare disobey and immediately retreated. Bailey Yuanlong and his daughter, however, didn't leave. "Your Highness, what's going on?" Bailey Yuanlong asked anxiously. Han Yunxi held back her disgust. She looked anxious and couldn't say anything. She just waved her hand vigorously and asked them to leave. She pushed Long Fei Yi away and asked him to leave too. "Your Highness, let's go." Bailey Yuanlong was very decisive. This matter was too strange, and the smell of a conspiracy was too strong. Han Yunxi had even said that he would be the vanguard. Who knew things would develop like this? No matter what the situation was, leaving this damned place was the way to go. "You two leave immediately." Long Fei Yi was furious. Bailey Mingxiang hurriedly pulled his father back, but Bailey Yuanlong waved his hand away. "Your Highness, Princess, let's leave together. This isn't a place to stay for long." Han Yunxi's eyes blazed with anger. She suddenly pushed Long Fei Yi towards Bailey Yuanlong. "Long Fei Yi, go. I don't have time to explain things to you." Long Fei Yi couldn't do it. It was at this time that Han Yunxi finally couldn't take it anymore. Her elegant brows furrowed, and there was a sudden boom behind her that shook heaven and earth, kicking up a large cloud of dust. Han Yunxi suddenly fell to her knees, unable to care about anything else as she threw up. It was too disgusting. As soon as the 20,000 poisonous snakes and the giant python-like snake queen entered the poison storage space, they filled the entire space and moved around in a dense mass. Even if it was only beneficial to the poison storage space, she really couldn't take it anymore. She couldn't ignore it. Her mind was filled with snakes, densely intertwined snake bodies that stood up to form clumps of snake heads. She really felt like her body and mind were about to be filled with snakes. Heavens! Han Yunxi would have gone crazy if she'd held it in a little longer. She was fully prepared, but she didn't expect this. She didn't expect to be disgusted by these poisonous snakes. This was definitely the biggest failure in her career, in the history of glory battle. Snake, Bailey Mingxiang suddenly screamed. At this time, the cloud of dust had already dispersed, revealing a huge fog behind Han Yunxi. It was a giant python-like white-lipped kite that was as tall as 3 people. Han Yunxi, who was lying on the ground, looked especially small. This was the snake queen of the snake den. Its eyes were demonic red, and its tongue flicked out. The most disgusting thing was that its body was covered in poisonous snakes. Han Yunxi really couldn't take it anymore. She could only release the snake queen and some of the poisonous snakes to make herself feel better. She also had the detoxification system quickly turn the poisonous snakes into medicine and poison. In any case, as long as a poisonous snake attacked her, it would be absorbed into her poison storage space. At most, she would feel a little disgusted. At most, she would repeat the process a few times. The detoxification system would always be able to turn these poisonous snakes into medicine. However, Long Fei Yi and the others were in danger here. Not to mention the poisonous snakes she released, just the snake den itself was filled with poisonous gas. Although they'd all taken the antidote had a time limit, and the medicine might not be enough to overcome the poison in the den. In short, it was too troublesome. When the Snake Queen was released, it was still in a daze. When it heard Bailey Mingxiang scream, it went crazy and pounced on Bailey Mingxiang. Han Yunxi panicked. Long Fei Yi, let her go, quickly. Before Long Fei Yi could make a move, Bailey Mingxiang, who was closest to Bailey Mingxiang, pulled her away. The Snake Queen pounced on empty air and hit the ground. It immediately turned around and glared at them like a tiger watching its prey. The poisonous snakes hanging from its body fell to the ground, waiting for an opportunity to strike. Long Fei Yi, you know about the poison storage space. Go. I'll be fine. There's a hole in this snake den. I have to keep it, otherwise they'll escape. Han Yunxi suppressed her temper and said seriously. Bailey Yuanlong, take your daughter away. This is an order. Long Fei Yi said sternly. He wouldn't leave. Although he didn't know any poison techniques, his speed was enough to escape. He could even deal with Jun Xie, so what could a snake queen do? He couldn't leave Han Yunxi here alone. No matter how capable she was, he couldn't be at ease. Moreover, Han Yunxi had been unconscious for several days after receiving the poison pond. How could he be at ease? Wasn't she feeling unwell right now? Moreover, this snake disaster was deliberately caused by someone. What if there were other ambushes in the den? Mingxiang, leave. If His Highness doesn't leave, I won't leave either. Bailey Yuanlong said coldly. If you don't leave, Mingxiang won't leave either. Bailey Mingxiang also became stubborn. As soon as he finished speaking, the Snake Queen suddenly attacked again. Although it was big, it moved very quickly. It had to be said that it was very smart. It didn't attack Han Yunxi or Long Fei Yi, but attacked the Bailey father and daughter instead. Bailey Yuanlong didn't have time to dodge. Fortunately, Long Fei Yi pushed him away with a palm. He and Bailey Mingxiang were thrown to the side. If the Snake Queen didn't attack Han Yunxi wouldn't be able to deal with it. It was so big that it would be very difficult to kill it with poison. Only Long Fei Yi could deal with it. When the Snake Queen saw the father and daughter fall, it immediately turned its head to face Long Fei Yi and swept its tail toward the father and daughter. Han Yunxi was almost driven mad by this pair of father and daughter. The Snake Queen was smarter than them. How could Bailey Yuanlong and Bailey Mingxiang deal with a snake queen with their martial arts? Han Yunxi resisted the nausea and suddenly rushed toward the father and daughter. No one expected her to do this. Even the snake queen was very surprised. Its huge tail was about to attack Bailey Yuanlong, but it suddenly stopped. It was obvious that the snake queen was very afraid of Han Yunxi. The father and daughter were protected by Han Yunxi. The snake queen made a prompt decision to attack Long Fei Yi. Its huge body rushed over in an instant, and it even spat out a cloud of poisonous gas. Long Fei Yi, be careful. Han Yunxi was greatly alarmed. She threw several needles at the snake queen, but thin needles couldn't do anything to such a huge creature. Bailey Yuanlong and his daughter were also shocked. Bailey Yuanlong threw caution to the wind and ruthlessly stabbed his sword into the snake's tail. Han Yunxi couldn't stop him in time. This stab couldn't harm the snake queen's life at all. It would only agitate it. Sure enough, the snake queen seemed to have gone mad. Its tail swung wildly and swept around. Han Yunxi was so angry that she wanted to curse. The snake's tail attack wasn't a poison attack. Even the poison storage space couldn't protect her. Bailey Mingxiang and Bailey Yuanlong were martial artists and could still dodge, but she didn't know what to do. Just as the snake's huge tail was about to swing toward her, a black shadow passed through the snake queen's poisonous gas and flew over. Who else could it be but Long Fei Yi? Almost at the same time he pulled Han Yunxi away, the snake's tail swung down and smashed a huge hole in the wall. Long Fei Yi and Han Yunxi fell to the right of the snake's tail, while Bailey Yuanlong and Bailey Mingxiang fell to the left. Bailey Yuanlong hurriedly got up. "Your Highness, are you all right?" Long Fei Yi was furious. "Get out of here right now, or I'll kill you." Long Fei Yi had been poisoned, and it was very deep. His ice-cold eyes flickered with a frightening chill, causing the Bailey father and daughter to tremble. However, when the father and daughter saw his black lips, they couldn't leave. Just as they were speaking, the snake's tail suddenly rose up. It was so fast that everyone was stunned. Long Fei Yi's reaction was the fastest. He immediately retreated while protecting Han Yunxi. "Long Fei Yi, there's no other way. Let's go up first." Han Yunxi could only use the last resort. There was no other way to let the snake queen escape. However, as soon as she said this, her face turned pale. The detoxification system was reminding her that she had to immediately detoxify Long Fei Yi. Otherwise, he would end up like those soldiers who couldn't be saved in time. Even if Long Fei Yi took the antidote, he wouldn't be able to resist the snake queen's poison. The snake queen's poison was several times stronger than half of the snake's. "Detoxify! Long Fei Yi!" Han Yunxi panicked, her hands trembling. She wouldn't panic in the face of anything, but facing Long Fei Yi alone, she couldn't imagine what the world would be like without this man. She panicked and took out 3 portions of antidote for Long Fei Yi to take. "Long Fei Yi, you have to detoxify the poison immediately, or else you'll die." On the side, Bailey Yuanlong and Bailey Mingxiang were also stunned when they heard this. Right at this moment, the snake queen's position suddenly swung fiercely at Han Yunxi and the others. Long Fei Yi hugged Han Yunxi and wanted to dodge, but Han Yunxi unexpectedly pushed him away fiercely. In an instant, the snake's tail swung fiercely at Han Yunxi's legs. Han Yunxi instantly fell to the ground, paralyzed. With this kind of strength, it would be strange if the bones in her legs didn't break. Everyone was shocked. Long Fei Yi didn't recover for a moment. He never thought that Han Yunxi would push him away. Was she stupid? Although he was poisoned, he still had his martial arts. Her legs were in so much pain that she couldn't speak. She never thought she'd be able to endure such pain. She shouted, "Long Fei, you can't circulate your qi or get angry. Otherwise, the poison will spread faster and no one will be able to save you. I beg you." So. Chapter 875. So this was the reason Han Yunxi had pushed Long Fei away. In such an urgent situation, she had no choice at all. If she hadn't pushed him away just now, he would have been done for. Long Fei looked at the woman he doted on, paralyzed in front of him, but he was powerless to do anything about it. His deep eyes burned with anger, as if they would never be extinguished. The sword in his hand seemed to sense his anger, clanging loudly. "Long Fei, I beg you. I beg you." Han Yunxi was on the verge of tears. She was afraid that if he acted impulsively, everything would be irreparable. Bailey Yuanlong and Bailey Mingxiang were dumbstruck. They never expected this outcome. What reason did Bailey Yuanlong have to suspect Han Yunxi? Han Yunxi's leg was broken. Broken. The Snake Queen didn't pity anyone. Seeing that Han Yunxi was injured and Long Fei wasn't moving, the cunning Snake Queen seemed to sense something. She turned around and attacked Han Yunxi with her tail. At this moment, Bailey Yuanlong flew over and pulled Han Yunxi away. He flew towards Long Fei and yelled, "Mingxiang, go get reinforcements." Bailey Mingxiang came to her senses and immediately flew up, shouting, "Su Donglin! Su Donglin!" However, a venomous snake leaped out of the cliff and pounced on her. She screamed in fright and fell down. Only then did she realize that the venomous snakes that had been hanging on the Snake Queen's body had all climbed up the cliff. Bailey Mingxiang was afraid of snakes. She was very, very afraid. However, she resolutely flew up again. By this time, the Snake Queen had already launched another attack. Bailey Yuanlong's abilities were limited, and he couldn't escape far with Han Yunxi and Long Fei. He couldn't keep up after dodging two of the Snake Queen's attacks. "Bailey Yuanlong, take us to the right. No matter what, buy me the time needed to brew a cup of tea. Only then can I cure His Highness of the poison." Han Yunxi could only rely on Bailey Yuanlong even though she was filled with rage. "I will definitely do it. This general will issue a military order." Bailey Yuanlong answered firmly. He gritted his teeth and led Long Fei and Han Yunxi to avoid the attack of the snake's tail. He sent the two of them to the right corner of the poison cave. "Bailey Yuanlong, don't go too far. The Snake Queen doesn't dare to attack me with her poison, only her tail. If you stand behind me, you won't be poisoned," Han Yunxi said. "All right." Bailey Yuanlong immediately agreed. He remembered how he had been so obedient to Han Yunxi back in the Commander-in-Chief's manor. He couldn't think about the past. Whenever he did, he would cry. Han Yunxi didn't care how much time Bailey Yuanlong could buy for her. She only had one thought in mind, which was to cure Long Fei of the poison and save Long Fei's life. Everyone could only live if he lived. If something happened to him, who would live? After giving Bailey Yuanlong instructions, Han Yunxi turned around and met Long Fei's cold eyes. They were filled with hostility, as if they wanted to destroy the world. She was shocked and hurriedly grabbed his hand. "Yi, listen to me, okay? Calm down. I'm fine. Really. It's just a broken leg. It can be cured." She didn't even know if he would suddenly draw his sword and charge out. If that happened, his blood would rush to his head and all her efforts would be in vain. Sure enough, Long Fei retracted his sword. Han Yunxi hurriedly pressed it down. "Long Fei, my life is in your hands. If your poison isn't cured, we'll all die. It's just a pair of legs. Are they worth both of our lives? Long Fei Yi, I'm begging you. Han Yunxi didn't have time. To be precise, Long Fei Yi didn't have time. Han Yunxi tugged at his belt with one hand to help him unbutton his shirt, while her other hand tightly pressed down on his hand for fear that he would use force. Once his clothes were undone, she had to use both hands to perform acupuncture. However, he still stared at her kneeling legs, his murderous aura growing stronger and stronger. Han Yunxi took his hand and pressed it against her heart. Long Fei Yi, I need you to give me strength. With that, she let go of his hand and began to search for acupuncture points on his abdomen, forcing herself to concentrate. Long Fei Yi pressed one hand on his sword and the other on Han Yunxi's heart. One hand was ruthless, the other soft. One hand was cold, and the other was warm. His self-control had always been strong, but he had never been as impulsive as he was now. He wanted nothing more than to throw away his life to destroy the world. He wanted to let go of Han Yunxi several times, but in the end, he couldn't bear to let her heartbeat go. He was on the verge of losing control. Suddenly, he felt a chill in his abdomen. He looked down and saw that Han Yunxi was crying. Her tears were dripping onto his abdomen. Only then did he realize that her face, which had always been strong and calm, was now covered in tears. Han Yunxi endured the pain in her legs as she performed acupuncture. She was worried about Long Fei Yi's impulsiveness and worried about whether Bailey Yuanlong could stop the Snake Queen. She couldn't concentrate at all. Originally, she could have finished it in a short while, but now, she felt like she couldn't finish it. She was about to break down. Long Fei Yi finally recovered from his ruthlessness. How could he lose control at this time? How could he break down? Han Yunxi needed him. No matter how powerful they were or how high their status was, there was one thing he would always surpass her in, the strength of his heart. No matter what, his heart had to be stronger than hers. Only then would he be able to protect her. He finally let go of his sword and rested his hands on her shoulders. Yunxi, be good, it'll be fine. Trust me, it'll definitely be fine. Han Yunxi dearly wanted him to give her strength. Hearing his gentle voice calmed her heart. As long as he was calm, she could be calm as well. She wiped away her tears and gathered her thoughts. Needle by needle, her movements were nimble and beautiful. By now, Bailey Yuanlong had already been swung around multiple times by the Snake Queen's tail. Although the blows landed on his chest and back, he used internal energy to protect his body and bones. His sword had already been flung to one side and his body was riddled with internal injuries. He could only rely on his broken body to resist the Snake Queen's tail. He mustered up all his strength and used all his internal energy to get into a horse stance behind Han Yunxi. If the Snake Queen wanted to hurt Han Yunxi and the rest, it would have to hit him first. There was a loud crash. The Snake Queen's tail came crashing down, causing him to spit out a mouthful of blood. Although he was on the verge of collapse, he grit his teeth and steadied himself. Soon enough, there was another crash as the Snake Queen's tail came crashing down again. Bailey Yuanlong's body swayed and almost fell backwards. Bailey Yuanlong only felt the world spin before his vision turned pitch black. He simply closed his eyes and forgot everything before him, including the injuries on his body. In his mind floated the image of Han Yunxi sparring with the head of one of the south-central regions and fighting for power for the Bailey army. Back then, that girl had nothing to do with Western Qin. She was purely Qin Wangfei, the mistress he was proud of. Bam, bam, bam. The Snake Queen thrashed about madly, each blow harder and faster than the last. Bailey Yuanlong's blood had already spilled onto the Snake Queen's tail. He was already prepared to die here, so dying like this would be a peace of mind. Just how long was the time it took to brew a cup of tea? Bailey Yuanlong didn't know how much time had passed. He only felt that his internal energy was about to run out and his legs were about to give out. His entire body leaned back uncontrollably. "Esteemed Wang Fei, how long has it been?" he muttered to himself. He didn't even realize that he'd called her esteemed Wang Fei. If His Highness was only Tianning's Duke of Qin and Han Yunxi was only their esteemed Wang Fei, wouldn't everything be much simpler? He was a soldier who led troops into battle and killed enemies. If His Highness wasn't the one who gave him pointers, then it was the strategists who came up with strategies. More than anyone else, he wanted everything to be simple. All of his daughters' marriages had been forced out of their own hands. His most beloved eldest daughter had concealed her identity and married off to the distant northernly. Even now, no one else in the Bailey army knew that there was actually an eldest young miss in the family. His youngest daughter, Mingxiang, had stayed by his side for the longest time, but she'd suffered the most. All of this was for the sake of revenge and the revival of East Qin. Oh. What was wrong with him being on guard against Western Qin's princess? He'd already tacitly approved of His Highness's willfulness, so shouldn't he be on guard against her as well? But now he didn't even know if he was right or wrong. Just as Bailey Yuanlong was about to fall to the ground, Su Donglin caught him. He could faintly hear Su Donglin say, "Someone come, send General Bailey up first." After that, he fell unconscious. Bailey Mingxiang had already reached the surface while Su Donglin led 20 poison guards to rescue him. He'd long wanted to come down, but His Highness's orders prevented him from interfering with His Highness and the princess, so he could only endure. Bailey Mingxiang hadn't even reached the top of the cave when he heard her shouts. He knew the situation wasn't good and immediately rushed down to rescue General Bailey. The princess was still helping His Highness detoxify the poison while he stood guard on one side. The 20 poison guards worked together to stop the Snake Queen and buy time for the princess. At this moment, the shadow guard above the snake cave was transmitting true qi to the bloodied Bailey Yuanlong to heal his wounds. Even so, fresh blood continued to flow from Bailey Yuanlong's mouth. The shadow guards were starting to panic. Bailey Mingxiang fell to sit on the side, tears streaming down her face like a broken dam. "Father. Father, you have to hold on. Father, you said you'd personally lead troops to flatten Tianning and kill your way to Northernly. You said you'd personally see His Highness ascend the throne." Sob, sob. "Father, you promised the clansmen that once His Highness revived East Qin, you'd personally go into the water to salvage the skeletons of the merfolk soldiers. You promised that you would help them find their families and erect a monument for them. Father, you can't die, you can't die." After an indeterminate amount of time, Long Fei Ye's poison was successfully detoxified. The 20 merfolk soldiers and Su Donglin protected Han Yunxi while Long Fei Ye killed the Snake Queen with his sword. With nothing to worry about, he easily avoided the Snake Queen's poison gas under Han Yunxi's guidance. Within 3 moves, he'd split the Snake Queen into 3 parts with 3 slashes before killing off the rest of the snakes on the walls one by one. He stood in front of Han Yunxi, hoping with all his might that Han Yunxi would stand up like before and wrap her arms around his neck. But Han Yunxi only sat paralyzed on the ground. He didn't dare examine her leg, afraid that he wouldn't be able to bear the consequences. Was it really only broken? Han Yunxi smiled at him, her face pale. "It's fine." He didn't say anything, only stared deeply at her without saying a word for a long time. When facing each other, whose heart was stronger? Chapter 876. Long Fei Yi and Han Yunxi both had strong abilities and strong mental fortitude, but when they faced each other, they would easily break down. It was just like those 4 words, caring makes one confused. Han Yunxi had completely calmed down. She looked at Long Fei Ye's silent appearance. She knew that if something really happened to her leg, he would go on a killing spree. Although she was afraid that he would lose control, she still wanted to see him on the verge of breaking down for her. Of course, this was because they were in a very safe situation. For a long time, Long Fei didn't move at all. Only his handsome eyebrows were knitted tighter and tighter. This guy, why did he look so good even when he was knitting his eyebrows? No matter how bad Han Yunxi was, she would still feel heartache. Even though her legs were still in pain, she still smiled. It's just broken. Really, it's not a big deal. She had just gotten out of danger, so she had the mind to care about her own injuries. She didn't need to check to know that it was just a broken bone. It was a small matter that could be recovered. She would be fine after finding a normal doctor to fix it. Long Fei didn't believe her. He stared at her in a daze. The pain and self-blame in his eyes were so strong that it couldn't be dispersed. The snake tail had such a strong impact. Although Han Yunxi had a little bit of internal energy, she didn't know how to use it. How could it be as simple as a fracture? At this moment, his grave and handsome face was serious, self-blaming, distressed, pampering, and a little panicked. Seeing this, Han Yunxi almost laughed out loud. The life and death situation just now didn't seem to be much. It was fine as long as he was fine. She pulled his hand and shook it. It's true. I'm a dog if I lie to you. I'm in so much pain. Hurry and find a doctor. Long Fei recovered his senses. Really? Aya, you're so annoying. Han Yunxi was helpless. The shadow guard at the side was so scared that he broke out in cold sweat. There was actually a woman in this world who dared to find His Highness annoying? Too scary. What was even scarier was that His Highness actually laughed. He shook his head and smiled bitterly. Since Long Fei couldn't do anything to this woman, he felt very lucky. If something were to happen to her, he didn't know what he would do. He was about to squat down when Han Yunxi stopped him. She reached out to him and said, I don't need you to lower yourself. Pull me up. He was the most honorable. No matter what, she would not let him lower himself because she was also honorable. She wanted to stand side by side with him. All right. He agreed immediately. No matter how one looked at it, the two of them looked so sweet. This conversation made the surrounding shadow guards reminisce endlessly. Su Donglin secretly wrote 2 more lines in the book, but at this time, he still had to interrupt the two of them. Your Highness, the princess's legs are fractured. It's best not to pull her. Su Donglin sighed inwardly. For better or worse, the princess was a 7th-rank medical sage and held a place in the Medical Academy's Council of Elders. How could she forget even this little bit of first-aid common sense? However, thinking about the dangerous situation just now, Su Donglin was still trembling in fear. It was already very good that the princess could still smile. It was normal for her to forget everything. With Su Donglin's advice, Long Fei immediately stopped. Han Yunxi laughed at herself for being so careless and scared out of her wits. After a fracture, it was necessary to quickly fix the wound with a deck. Otherwise, the fracture would move randomly and affect the nerves and blood vessels, causing paralysis. Only now did she realize that not only did her legs hurt, but they also felt a bit numb. She had been dragged away by Bailey Yuanlong to escape from the Snake Queen and knelt for so long to help Long Fei perform acupuncture. Presumably, the fracture had already shifted into a messy position. Moreover, there must be internal bleeding and blood clots. She was still in a kneeling position. It had to be said that when she focused on the wound, she felt an unbearable pain. Su Donglin, go find a doctor immediately. Long Fei ordered. For people who practice martial arts like them, sometimes, if it wasn't very serious, they could just find someone to fix it and fix it. It would be fine. However, in front of Han Yunxi, Long Fei Yi didn't dare to be careless. He also knew how to fix bones, but at this moment, he was anxious to see Han Yunxi. He didn't even dare to help her. Han Yunxi gave herself 2 needles to relieve the pain. Long Fei Yi, help me up. Let me sit up. Kneeling like this wasn't a solution. It would compress the nerves and cause blood clots and severe paralysis. It'll hurt. I'll let you bite me. Long Fei Yi supported her with one hand and reached out with the other. Han Yunxi originally thought that it wouldn't hurt much after giving herself 2 needles, but it turned out that she had overestimated her ability to resist pain. She had only moved a little when the pain made her gasp. Long Fei Yi was anxious, but he had no choice but to let her sit up. Bear with it. I'll let you bite me. He really reached out his hand, and she really bit down. The surrounding shadow guards looked at each other in dismay. They were shocked and really, really curious. What did it feel like to bite His Highness? Han Yunxi couldn't sit up, so she lay on the ground. Long Fei Ye's hand was left with a deep bite mark. He only glanced at the bite mark and ordered all the shadow guards to faint. He lifted Han Yunxi's long skirt and checked her calf. Han Yunxi stared at the bite mark on his arm and couldn't stop looking. Long Fei Yi checked and found that the injury wasn't as serious as he thought. His eyes flashed with surprise. He immediately took Han Yunxi's pulse and found that she had suffered some internal injuries. Did you use your internal strength just now? He asked in confusion. No. I don't know how to. Han Yunxi knew that she had internal strength, but she didn't know how to use it. Long Fei Yi had 2 layers of internal strength. One was the Lust Bite power, and the other was the Nirvana power. He imparted the Nirvana power to Han Yunxi. He didn't expect that the 2 layers of Nirvana power in her body would automatically protect her body. This was a state of stress. Generally, one had to cultivate more than 50% of their internal strength to have this kind of power. He didn't expect that Han Yunxi could do it with only 20%. Her talent was really amazing. It seems that you are very suitable for the Nirvana power. If it wasn't for the Nirvana power protecting you today, you would have. Long Fei Yi didn't continue speaking and replaced it with a long sigh. Su Donglin quickly found a doctor. He didn't find a military doctor, but a doctor from the nearby village. After all, the princess's identity had to be kept a secret. Their group of people disguised themselves so that most people wouldn't recognize them. When the doctor arrived at the snake cave and saw the snake queen's corpse, he was frightened. When he bumped into Long Fei Ye's cold eyes, he almost fell down. Doctor, don't worry. It's very safe here. Su Donglin comforted him in a low voice. Only then did the doctor calm down. He carefully checked Han Yunxi's injuries before starting the treatment. All the shadow guards had their backs turned. Only Long Fei Yi sat cross-legged on the side and stared at him. This made the doctor feel even more pressured. Although reconnecting bones wasn't like taking a pulse and couldn't be done through a curtain, the doctor felt as if he had committed a heinous crime. He didn't dare to look at His Highness. Reconnecting bones was something that should be done by chatting with the patient and diverting their attention. However, under Long Fei Ye's scrutiny, the doctor didn't dare to open his mouth. After he had prepared everything, he simply threw caution to the wind and fiercely pulled and pushed. Han Yunxi was in so much pain that she didn't feel good. The doctor didn't stop and immediately reconnected her other leg. It was better to have a short period of pain than a long period of pain. Han Yunxi really couldn't take it anymore. She abruptly grabbed Long Fei's hand and bit down viciously. Long Fei Yi didn't even frown. He allowed her to bite and gently played with her bangs. He was very gentle. The doctor thought that he was done for. Seeing that Long Fei Yi didn't flip out, he felt very lucky. He quickly applied medicine and fixed the wound. After bandaging it, everything was done. The doctor prescribed some medicinal herbs and gave a few instructions. Then, he hurriedly ran to Su Donglin's side. He was still afraid. He was afraid that Long Fei Yi would dig out his eyes if he was unhappy. However, Long Fei Yi ignored him. His attention was all on Han Yunxi's leg. Does it still hurt? It doesn't hurt. Han Yunxi pointed at his hand with an apologetic look. Does it hurt? I'm sorry. Long Fei Yi then realized that the area between his thumb and index finger on his left hand was badly mangled. The bite mark was especially deep. Quickly treat it. Otherwise, it will leave a scar. Han Yunxi said anxiously. She didn't do it on purpose, but she really couldn't take it just now. The area between the thumb and index finger couldn't be covered at all. If it really left a scar, it would be easily seen by others. Long Fei Yi raised his hand and seriously looked over it. After seeing it for so long, he finally laughed. I won't treat it. Just leave a scar. It looks pretty good. Long Fei Yi. Han Yunxi was anxious. Treat it as your Chinese Valentine's Day gift to this prince. Long Fei Yi was in a very good mood. Han Yunxi could only look at the sky speechlessly. She was thinking that when he fell asleep tonight, she would secretly help him treat his wound. Bite marks were different from other scars. You could tell with a single glance that it was bitten. Looking at the thickness of the bite mark, you could tell that it was bitten by a woman. Long Fei Yi was clearly leaving evidence of her crime. When the doctor was about to be sent away, Long Fei Yi suddenly said, "Must it be 100 days? It would take 100 days to recover from a serious injury." Yes. It'll take 100 days to fully recover. During the day, you mustn't. The doctor stammered, but Long Fei Yi only coldly cut him off. Is there any medicine that can heal it faster? Han Yunxi smiled. Su Donglin, send the doctor away. Remember to pay the consultation fee. A village doctor like this wasn't some hidden expert, so how could he know so much? If Long Fei Yi, the cold-faced Yama, asked a few more questions, he'd definitely scare the doctor to death. Let's go back first and ask Medical and Medicine City, she couldn't help but sigh. If only Gu Beiyue was here, I still can't get in touch with him. White-robed gentleman, white-robed gentleman. Are you doing well at Bai Yanqing's place? When are you going to tell Miss Yunxi everything in person? Why did Su Donglin have the servants send the doctor away? Once the wound was fixed, they could move. Long Fei Yi picked up Han Yunxi in a princess carry and was about to leave when he turned back. Su Donglin, take this snake queen back. Chop it up and feed it to the dogs. Han Yunxi didn't know whether to laugh or cry. The snake queen is a good thing. Su Donglin, leave the snake head and core to me. Of course Su Donglin knew that the snake queen was full of treasures, but since His Highness said to feed it to the dogs, what else could he do besides reluctantly part with it? Long Fei Yi easily flew out of the snake den with Han Yunxi in his arms. By now, the sky had already brightened. The Bailey father and daughter were still outside, both in bad shape. Chapter 877. When Long Fei Yi and Han Yunxi flew out of the snake cave, they saw that Bailey Yuanlong and Bailey Mingxiang were still outside. Bailey Yuanlong had already fainted and was covered in blood. The blood at the corner of his mouth was a mess and his face was as pale as a corpse. The shadow guard was still pouring true qi into him, not giving up. First, the shadow guard did not know how Bailey Yuanlong disobeyed His Highness' orders last night. Second, Bailey Mingxiang was the head of the mermaid clan, the head of the East Qin army. In the East Qin camp, he was only below one person and above tens of thousands. Even if he committed a heinous crime, His Highness did not say anything and no one dared to do anything to him. Bailey Mingxiang was kneeling on the side crying all night. Her eyes were bloodshot and she felt like she was going blind from crying. When she saw Long Fei Yi and Han Yunxi come out, she quickly stood up. After kneeling all night, her legs were already numb and she fell to the ground before she could even take 2 steps. She anxiously crawled over and reached out to grab Long Fei Yi's leg, but she did not dare. She pulled back her hand and forcefully kowtowed, "Your Highness, Mingxiang and my father know our wrongs. We beg your Highness to save my father. Your Highness, my father's internal injuries are very heavy, only you can save him. Your Highness, Mingxiang begs you, I beg you. Your Highness, my father will die. Woo, woo, Your Highness." She cried and begged while forcefully kowtowing. The pang, pang, pang sounds did not stop. It was like if she kowtowed a bit harder, His Highness' heart would soften. Long Fei Yi's face was as cold as ice and his eyes were filled with a monstrous rage. He did not even look at Bailey Mingxiang and coldly looked at Bailey Yuanlong. Han Yunxi was originally in a good mood, but once she saw Bailey Mingxiang, the rage she suppressed last night immediately surged up. Last night, if the father and daughter had listened to Long Fei Yi's orders and left, everyone would have been fine today, and no one would have been hurt. She wasn't sure about the specific situation of the snake cave, so she didn't dare to let Long Fei Yi take the risk. But reality proved that with Long Fei Yi's current martial arts, he wouldn't hinder her in any way. On the other hand, Bailey Yuanlong and his daughter were 2 idiots. Especially Bailey Yuanlong. That old man was unwilling to leave precisely because he suspected that she was up to no good. How could she not see that? If he was suspicious, then so be it. But in such a dangerous situation, he was still so stubborn. "Your Highness, I beg you, please save my father on account of all the hard work he's put in all these years, even if he hasn't made any contributions. Your Highness, I beg you. Your Highness, I beg you on behalf of the entire mermaid clan. My father can't die. Your Highness." Bailey Mingxiang saw that His Highness didn't say anything, so she quickly raised her head to look at Han Yunxi. "Esteemed Wang Fei," once these 4 familiar words came out of her mouth, Bailey Mingxiang's tears completely burst out. Why couldn't she change it? Esteemed Wang Fei was so intimate that it made her feel at ease. Princess was so unfamiliar that it made her afraid. Why was it like this? Didn't she see that phoenix birthmark a long time ago? Didn't she know that esteemed Wang Fei was the princess better than her father and everyone else in the world? "Princess, Mingxiang begs you. Mingxiang apologizes to Princess on behalf of my father. I beg Princess to save my father. If Princess wants Mingxiang to be an ox or a horse, I beg Princess to save my father." The coldness in Han Yunxi's eyes did not lose to Long Fei Yi's. She hated people that overestimated themselves the most. Bailey Mingxiang was the one that shouldn't have entered the poison den last night. She looked at Bailey Mingxiang from above without saying a word. She looked at her messy clothes and messy hair. She looked at her red eyes that were filled with tears. She looked at her forehead that was covered in blood and bruises. The more she looked at her pitiful appearance, the more anger she felt in her heart. Why did she suddenly make herself look so pitiful? Where did the dignified Bailey Mingxiang from before who knew when to advance and retreat go? Meeting the princess' cold eyes, Bailey Mingxiang's heart trembled and her tears began to flow. She knew that if the princess did not speak, no one would be able to persuade His Highness. She had already begged and said everything she could. She could only look up at her and plead. She no longer called her princess, but instead called her Princess Consort. It was as if this title could bring everything back to the past, where there was no conflict, no hatred. Princess Consort. Princess Consort. This servant is begging you, begging you. But even so, Han Yunxi was still indifferent. At this moment, she did not want to say a single word. Long Fei Yi did not stay for long. He did not say a single word to the shadow guard as he carried Han Yunxi and turned to leave. Bailey Mingxiang was completely flustered. She did not care about anything else as she crawled over to grab his leg. As soon as she touched him, Long Fei Yi kicked her away. Scram! Bailey Mingxiang fell to the side and finally collapsed. She began to cry, "Father! Father!" Han Yunxi let out a long breath. She did not want to look anymore, but she did not know why, but she still unconsciously turned her head. At this time, she saw Bailey Mingxiang lying on the ground. The clothes on the inner side of her arms were all bitten and there were rows of bite marks all over her body. These bite marks were in pairs and there were 2 deep wounds. They were all caused by the white-lipped krites. The bite marks on the inner side of her right arm were more scattered, but the inner side of her left arm near her wrist was densely packed. It was a shocking sight. How many poisonous snakes had Bailey Mingxiang been attacked when she flew up last night? Han Yunxi then remembered that there were at least 300 poisonous snakes that were released from the poison storage space with the Snake Queen. With so many wounds, how many snakes had wrapped around her arms? Which girl was not afraid of snakes? Han Yunxi was also afraid. She was so disgusted last night that she released the Snake Queen. Han Yunxi unconsciously looked down and found that there were many snake bite marks on Bailey Mingxiang's body and legs. She did not show any signs of being poisoned, so the poison guards must have given her a lot of antidotes last night. She had to admit that Han Yunxi could not imagine how such a weak girl had managed to break free from those poisonous snakes last night and fly up to ask for help. Bailey Mingxiang did not know that Han Yunxi was sizing her up. She did not dare to beg anymore. Other than crying, she did not know what else she could do. Long Fei Yi left step by step. Bailey Mingxiang's figure became more and more blurred in Han Yunxi's eyes. When they reached the tent, Han Yunxi sat down and stuffed a bottle of medicine into Su Donglin's hands. She whispered, "Find a female doctor nearby to take a look at Bailey Mingxiang." There were so many snake bite marks on Bailey Mingxiang's body. Although she had taken the antidote, those wounds still needed to be treated. It would be troublesome if they became infected. "Princess, what exactly happened last night? Why didn't His Highness care about General Bailey?" Su Donglin asked in a low voice. Han Yunxi briefly explained the situation. Su Donglin's face turned pale. Then General Bailey, Han Yunxi did not say anything. She waved her hand to dismiss him. Long Fei Yi was sitting at the side. He naturally heard Han Yunxi and Su Donglin's conversation. He did not say anything. He was carefully bandaging the bite marks on his left hand with gauze. He did not apply any medicine to prevent infection. Han Yunxi was about to speak, but he stopped her. He called Xiao Mama over to help Han Yunxi wash up and change her clothes. He also went to clean up. The smell of blood on his body was unbearable. After the two of them cleaned up, Xiao Mama came to deliver the food. During this time, Long Fei Yi had already written 2 letters. One to Medical City and the other to Medicine City, both asking for medicine. Although it wasn't a serious injury, he couldn't wait for Han Yunxi to recover by tomorrow. He couldn't bear to see Han Yunxi hurt even a little bit. When Xiao Mama saw the princess's injuries, she had a bellyful of words to say. However, with His Highness present, she did not dare to speak and could only shut her mouth. As for how Bailey Mingxiang and Bailey Yuanlong would be dealt with, Long Feiyi had not mentioned a word. Han Yunxi hesitated, but did not ask. Last night, you said you had another clue to find by Yanqing. What is it? Han Yunxi was more concerned about this matter. She couldn't get anything out of the dancer spies. Long Feiyi had said last night that he would take her away from the barracks. Su Xiaoyu, Long Feiyi said indifferently. There's news of little Yu. Han Yunxi was overjoyed. Little Yu had been missing for too long. On the second day after she returned to Long Feiyi's side, she had asked Su Donglin. Unfortunately, Su Donglin only shook his head. There's always been news, Long Feiyi replied. What do you mean? Han Yunxi was shocked. You. What are you hiding from me? Long Feiyi put down his chopsticks and said seriously, there's bad news. You should prepare yourself. Where's little Yu? What happened to her? Han Yunxi was anxious. Long Feiyi looked at her helplessly. He liked everything about her except for this. She was too compassionate to the people around her and was too soft-hearted. These people would become her soft spots, even fatal ones. Tell me. Han Yunxi stood up. Long Feiyi suddenly frowned and was unhappy. Han Yunxi sat down. Tell me, I'm ready. Su Xiaoyu is just a spy. Why are you so nervous? Long Feiyi asked unhappily. He was 70% serious and 30% jealous. Han Yunxi didn't say anything. Long Feiyi said unhappily, you'll fall for your own compassion sooner or later. Han Yunxi didn't want to refute him, but when she saw his serious and cold brows, she couldn't help but say, Long Feiyi, little Yu, is just a child. No matter how bad a child is, there's still a kind angel living in her heart. If you can give her a chance to do good, why not? What about Bailey Mingxiang? Long Feiyi asked. It was just a name. Although he didn't say it out loud, they both knew it in their hearts. In fact, Han Yunxi wasn't compassionate. She believed in people who were close to her, and she was also someone who needed friends. Han Yunxi avoided the topic and asked anxiously, what's wrong with little Yu? She's still alive. Long Feiyi didn't let her worry for too long. Then why do you want me to be mentally prepared? What's going on? Han Yunxi didn't understand. Long Feiyi then told her that Mrs. Helian was a northerly spy. Han Yunxi's heart ached when she heard it. She never thought that the spy beside them would be Mrs. Helian. She treated them so well. Helian Zuixiang married into the Han family very early. Bai Yanqing must have known about your identity long ago. You're very likely to be your father. Long Feiyi said lightly. Knowing that Han Yunxi wasn't the real Han family's legitimate daughter, he felt much more relaxed. Han Yunxi was stunned for a long time. The first thing she said was, you're taking little as a hostage. Yes, Han Yunxi is already in noble Consort Zhao's hands. Long Feiyi replied. You won't really hurt him, right? He's just a child. He definitely doesn't know about the spy. Han Yunxi thought of little sincere and pure expression when he was learning medicine from Gu Beiyue. She firmly believed that it couldn't be faked. That depends on how Helian Zuixiang cooperates with noble Consort Zhao. Long Feiyi's implication was that if Helian Zuixiang didn't cooperate, little wouldn't have a good time. Han Yunxi was furious. She slammed the table and stood up. Long Feiyi, I don't have any objections if you kill Helian Zuixiang, but you can't touch a single hair on little head. It's disgraceful to treat a child like this. Long Fei Yi scrutinized her in silence. Han Yunqi didn't back down. It's disgraceful. Chapter 878. Dishonorable. Do spies need to be honorable? Long Fei Yi retorted. Helian Zuixiang knew that she was a spy, so she shouldn't have given birth to that child. She brought all of this upon herself. But the child is innocent. Han Yunqi retorted. If Su Xiaoyu was guilty and deserved to be punished, then what about little Yi? Little Yi didn't even know his mother's background. Little Yi was also a victim. Little Yi said that he would protect her when he grew up. If he knew that his mother was a spy, the stubborn him would definitely cry. Long Fei Yi sighed softly. Although a general success was built on thousands of bones, he wouldn't go so far as to hurt an innocent child. Noble Consort Xiao wouldn't really do anything to little Yi. At most, she would create some illusions to scare Helian Zuixiang. Helian Zuixiang valued her son more than her own life, so she didn't refuse any of Noble Consort Zhao's orders. Long Fei Yi was just deliberately provoking Han Yunqi. As expected, she couldn't stand it and got angry all of a sudden. Seeing Long Fei Yi sigh, Han Yunqi suddenly realized that Long Fei Yi was testing her. If one day someone threatened her with news of little Yi, she probably wouldn't even be able to calm down and think about whether the news was true or false. So this was what Long Fei Yi meant when he said that she would fall into her own mercy. Han Yunqi looked pitifully at Long Fei Yi, knowing that she was impulsive and wrong. It didn't matter if she fell into her own mercy, but if one day she dragged Long Fei Yi, this unmerciful villain, down with her, then she would be guilty of the most heinous crime. Long Fei Yi stared at her, but didn't say anything. Han Yunqi frowned and reflected. Zhao Mama was anxious. This was the first time she had seen His Highness and the princess quarrel. She was really afraid that the princess, who didn't know the immensity of heaven and earth, would say something earth-shattering to annoy His Highness. Granny Zhao hesitated again and again, but in the end, she couldn't help but step forward and persuade with a smile, "Your Highness, the princess likes children, so there's nothing we can do about it. When the princess had a child in the future, she would be even more impulsive. Your Highness must keep a close eye on him." Granny Zhao was too talkative. As soon as she finished speaking, Long Fei Yi and Han Yunqi simultaneously turned to look at her. Zhao Mama's heart trembled with fear, but she still squeezed out a silly smile. Long Fei Yi and Han Yunqi were expressionless. They didn't look at Granny Zhao for long before they both turned their heads and inadvertently met each other's eyes. Han Yunqi immediately lowered her head. Long Fei Yi, who had been serious for most of the day, could not help but laugh. No matter how big the problem was, it did not seem to be a problem at this moment. He asked, "Do you like children?" Before Han Yunqi could answer, Long Fei Yi asked again, "Boys or girls?" Looking at Long Fei Yi's naturally cold face, Han Yunqi could never imagine that he would ask such a question. Granny Zhao, who was standing at the side, was already smiling like a flower. She couldn't help but imagine the tall and burly His Highness holding a little child. How was Han Yunqi supposed to answer? They were clearly discussing a very serious issue, okay? She was clearly reflecting on herself, okay? I'll remember what you said. I like children. So, don't make things too difficult for little Yi, okay? Han Yunqi took the opportunity to plead. She knew that there was no absolute justice in this world. Even she herself had used some despicable means. However, despicable means were for despicable people, not for innocent children. She could not sit by and do nothing when she knew that little Yi was in trouble. All right, Long Fei agreed easily. He didn't ask any more questions about the child. Han Yunxi's heart finally settled back into her chest. Although she didn't say it out loud, Helian Zuixiang's betrayal had chilled her heart quite a bit. It was rare for an elder to treat her well, but Han Yunxi did not mention Helian Zuixiang again. She took out a small bag from her bosom and placed it on the table. I picked this up on the way to the snake cave yesterday. Long Fei Yi opened it and saw that it was some broken stones, but it emitted a faint fragrance. This is. The white-lipped kite likes to eat this. Someone scattered this on the road and led the poisonous snakes to the west camp. It's autumn now, and snakes are all storing food to survive the winter. After finding food, they will not come out in full force and will only test it out first. Han Yunxi was very certain. Since they like to eat it, why would there be any leftovers? Long Fei Yi asked back. Han Yunxi's bag was not lacking. As soon as he finished speaking, he understood what was going on. These stones were deliberately scattered by someone after the 1,000 poisonous snakes arrived at the camp. This was evidence. It was evidence to prove that this snake disaster was not an accident, but rather someone deliberately did it. If the misunderstanding between him and Han Yunxi had not been resolved, if Han Yunxi was still in the Western Qin camp, he would have found the poison masters to deal with this snake disaster. When the poison masters found this evidence, Han Yunxi would be their first suspect. Now that East and Western Qin had stopped fighting, no matter what the reason was, if Western Qin used such a sinister method, East Qin would definitely be angry and might even start fighting again. So, the true culprit's goal was not to disturb the East Qin camp, but rather to sow discord between East and Western Qin, adding oil and vinegar to this old enemy's hatred. Han Yunxi picked up the broken stones to play with. Bailey Yuanlong's suspicion is human nature. Bailey Yuanlong was trying to accommodate Long Fei Yi and reluctantly accepted her existence as a hostage. Now that something like this had happened, how could Bailey Yuanlong not suspect her? Not jumping into the trap of the true culprit. Han Yunxi should be glad that she was not the real Western Qin princess. She should be glad that she was by Long Fei Yi's side and had an alibi. She should be glad that she had personally found this evidence. Otherwise, Western Qin would not be able to wash away this crime even if they jumped into the Yellow River. Bai Yanqing? Long Fei Yi asked. Other than him, who else could it be? Han Yunxi was puzzled. Long Fei Yi. With his poison skills, it wouldn't be hard for him to disturb the Western Qin and East Qin camps. A nest of poisonous snakes is enough to destroy an army. What does he want to do? If Bai Yanqing wanted to fight for the world with East and Western Qin, he could have done it a long time ago. Why wait until now? Bai Yanqing didn't seem to want the world's power, so what was his goal in stirring up this muddy water? Know thyself and know thy enemy, and you can win 100 battles. They couldn't even figure out Bai Yanqing's goal, so how could they fight him? Perhaps they thought they had won, but they had fallen into another trap of Bai Yanqing's. Long Fei Yi also couldn't figure it out. He softly said, no matter what, we have to find Gu Beiyue as soon as possible. Han Yunxi vigorously nodded, we'll leave tomorrow. My leg is fine, just give me a wheelchair. Han Yunxi didn't want to stay in the army camp for a second longer. Long Fei Yi naturally wouldn't be stupid enough to directly rush into the house where Su Xiaoyu was imprisoned to find Bai Yanqing. He must have used the clue of Su Xiaoyu and the bait of Bailey Mingxiang to set up a trap for Bai Yanqing. Long Fei Yi looked at Han Yunxi's leg and was very hesitant. If it was like the doctor said, it would take 100 days to recover. By the time Han Yunxi fully recovered, it would be too late for him to win. They couldn't afford to delay, but he couldn't bear to see her run around while injured. If it affected her recovery and left behind any side effects, it would be too late for regrets. Seeing Long Fei Yi's hesitation, Han Yunxi's eyes flashed craftily. She grabbed Long Fei Ye's hand and began to act coquettishly. Long Fei Ye, whether it's for public or private reasons, let's hurry up and find Gu Beiyue. My leg really hurts. If it takes 100 days, I definitely won't be able to take it. Let's leave tomorrow, alright. Long Fei Yi saw her pleading expression and had long given up. Han Yunxi tugged at his hand again. Fei, just agree. Long Fei Yi was clearly at a loss. He coughed lightly twice and stuttered, alright, I'll make the arrangements right away. You have to be good on the road. I'll definitely be good. Han Yunxi rejoiced. Long Fei Yi really did go to make arrangements. Of course, he didn't just arrange for tomorrow's secret trip, but also had Su Donglin burn down the snake den. He also pretended to invite dozens of poison masters to guard the den and lied about the news, pretending that West Camp had suffered heavy losses and that thousands of soldiers had been poisoned to death to confuse the true culprit. If Bai Yanqing found out that they'd only used a single night to eliminate the Snake Queen, then Bai Yanqing would definitely suspect Han Yunxi. Long Fei Yi even ordered the Shadow Guard to increase their defenses and search for spies. It wouldn't be Bai Yanqing himself who'd lured the vipers, but his subordinates. Besides the dancers, there were bound to be other Bai Yanqing's men lying in ambush in the area. By the time Long Fei Yi finished dealing with these matters, the sky had already darkened. Han Yunxi couldn't move, so she sat in the main tent and flipped through Long Fei Ye's memorials. In just one afternoon, Xiao Mama had brought her 3 types of nourishing soups. As for Long Fei Yi and his daughter, there was no news of them for most of the day. This meant that Long Fei Yi had ignored them for the entire day. Su Donglin came to report that he'd already found a female doctor to treat Bailey Mingxiang's wound. Han Yunxi only nodded and didn't say anything. After Su Donglin left, Xiao Mama couldn't help but advise, Princess, Mingxiang went to the poison den because she was worried that her father would harm you. Han Yunxi didn't even need to think to know that Xiao Mama had already gone to see Bailey Mingxiang. She didn't say anything. Xiao Mama had indeed gone to see Bailey Mingxiang and even gave her a good scolding. Bailey Mingxiang was filled with despair and self-blame. She had already stopped crying and was as silent as a mute. Princess, on the way to the snake den, General Bailey suspected that you were going to harm His Highness. Mingxiang couldn't persuade him, so in a moment of desperation, she chased after you. Han Yunxi turned around and coldly said, First, they were the direct cause of Long Fei Ye's poisoning. Second, they were all Long Fei Ye's subordinates. Long Fei Yi repeatedly ordered them to leave, but they repeatedly disobeyed. This is a grave crime that cannot be forgiven. Master. Xiao Mama panicked, who can remain calm in a life and death situation. They also didn't understand the situation. Seeing that the father and daughter were thinking for His Highness, please calm down, okay? If you don't speak, His Highness won't spare them. Han Yunxi sneered, what do you mean by obeying? It means that even if you don't understand the situation, you still have to follow orders. As a master, don't tell me that you have to explain everything clearly to your subordinates before giving orders. Xiao Mama was speechless. She finally understood why the princess was angry. Cold, Han Yunxi instructed, Xiao Mama, help me tell Bailey Mingxiang that I don't want disobedient maidservants. Tell her not to refer to herself as this servant in the future. Xiao Mama's heart was stifled. She nodded and retreated. Just as Xiao Mama was about to leave, Long Fei Yi entered. Clearly, he had heard everything Han Yunxi had just said. They were leaving tomorrow. No matter what, he had to deal with Bailey Yuanlong and his daughter tonight. Mo said, fix the bug in the last update. Han Yunxi has a fracture. No matter how agitated she is, she can't stand up. Mo was too agitated and made a mistake. Chapter 879. Long Fei-yi clearly heard the conversation between Han Yunxi and Granny Zhao, but he still didn't mention anything about Bailey and his daughter when he entered the room. He didn't know what Han Yunxi was thinking about this matter. Her eyes flashed with a touch of complexity, but she didn't ask much. She sat and couldn't move. He squatted down in front of her and checked her injury. "How is it? Does it still hurt?" "It doesn't hurt." "Knock it." Han Yunxi knocked on the wooden plank clamped on her leg. It really didn't hurt at all. Even if it didn't hurt, Long Fei-yi couldn't bear to knock it. He called for dinner, tidied up the booklets, washed his hands, and changed into casual clothes. Han Yunxi sat and watched him work. The corners of her mouth curled up. She didn't know that she was blissful. No matter what Long Fei-yi did, it was pleasing to the eye. It was said that admiring handsome men was good for the body and mind. Han Yunxi felt that this was very reasonable. After Long Fei-yi was done with his work, he brought water to Han Yunxi to wash her hands. Han Yunxi didn't say anything. Looking at him bending down seriously, she hoped that she could draw this scene and freeze it in a painting until the end of time. At this moment, they were an ordinary couple. They didn't need to worry about national affairs. They only needed to worry about their daily lives, washing their hands, and eating. Long Fei-yi, How did I meet you? How did I meet you? Long Fei-yi glanced at her and didn't answer. Long Fei-yi, How did we meet? Long Fei-yi still didn't answer. He wiped her hands clean. Han Yunxi looked up at him tenderly. Long Fei-yi, I think. Long Fei-yi covered her eyes with his big hand. What nonsense are you thinking? Get ready to eat. I'm not thinking nonsense. I want to eat. He interrupted her. He was naturally cold. If it wasn't for his strong feelings, he wouldn't discuss such tender and sweet feelings with Han Yunxi. He avoided Han Yunxi's tender gaze and seemed uncomfortable. Han Yunxi saw him avoiding her and suddenly laughed. Long Fei-yi, I'm thinking that my hands aren't crippled. Why are you washing my hands? Long Fei-yi looked over and was obviously stunned. Han Yunxi saw Long Fei-yi's awkward look for the first time. She couldn't help but laugh. He Yunxi's face. Of course. Of the water Yunxi's face. He Yunxi's face. Hans dodged immediately. Long Fei simply splashed her with water. With her legs injured, there was no way she could escape. She looked over. Okay. I'm just kidding. Long Fei was solemn and serious. He abruptly kicked up another wave of water, drenching Han Yunxi's clothes completely. Han Yunxi didn't hide anymore, but gave him a provoking look of her own. The two of them confronted each other seriously. Long Fei-yi narrowed his eyes slowly. He pressed the tip of his tongue against the corner of his mouth. Han Yunxi didn't want to be outdone. She lifted her chin and looked at him disdainfully. Long Fei-yi leaned forward and placed his hands on both sides of her. He looked at her coldly. If it were anyone else, they would have fainted. Han Yunxi even glared at him as a warning. Long Fei-yi ignored her warning and lowered his head slowly. He looked like he was going to bite her. Han Yunxi stopped him and pointed at her calf sternly. She waved her hand like a high and mighty queen. In the silence, Long Fei-yi couldn't help but laugh. Han Yunxi laughed too. She looked like a villain who had succeeded. Unexpectedly, Long Fei-yi suddenly leaned forward again with a threatening look. Han Yunxi put her hands on his sturdy chest and warned, "Don't bully a disabled person." She was injured. No matter how much trouble she caused, Long Fei-yi would have to give in to her. You can Find a different kind of bullying, Long Fei murmured in a low voice, his hot breath brushing against her ear. Han Yunxi couldn't help but shiver. Long Fei Ye's lips were already teasing her sensitive nerves. Oh my god, this guy must be crazy. She pushed him away hurriedly. No. He lowered his voice even more. Be good. Don't move. She would be good and stay still. He would serve her. Han Yunxi's face turned red. How could she do that? She couldn't imagine. Just as Long Fei Yi was about to take off her wet clothes, Su Donglin's report came from outside the door. Your Highness, the young general requests an audience. Both of them were stunned. Han Yunxi immediately burst into laughter. A trace of displeasure flitted across Long Fei Ye's eyes, but he quickly got up. After Han Yunxi changed into clean clothes, Long Fei Ye's face was so gloomy that it was about to drip water. Han Yunxi couldn't stop laughing. Han Yunxi knew that no matter how unhappy Long Fei Yi was, he still wanted to see the young general. They were leaving tomorrow, but Long Fei Yi still hadn't dealt with Bailey Yuanlong. He was clearly waiting for someone to plead for leniency. It had been a whole day. The person should be here by now. This young general was none other than Bailey Yuanlong's most outstanding son, his third son, Bailey Yuqi. He was the one who had led troops to surround Fishery Island. His calmness in the face of the poisonous fog had left a deep impression on Han Yunxi. Bailey Yuqi knelt down as soon as he entered. Your Highness, this general begs for forgiveness on behalf of my father. Father disobeyed a military order and deserves 1,000 deaths. This general begs for your Highness to spare my father's life. Long Fei Yi ate his dinner with a gloomy face and ignored him. Seeing that His Highness wasn't speaking, Bailey Yuqi felt uneasy. Your Highness, the war is imminent. The army can't be without a general. My father already knows his wrongs. Your Highness, please consider. Long Fei Yi didn't seem to like the word consider. He raised a hand to stop him and said coldly, Han Yunxi was the one who dealt with the snake disaster. Let's see what she thinks about this matter. Bailey Yuqi was shocked. His face was full of disbelief, and the resentment that had long been hidden gradually surfaced in his eyes. He finally looked straight at Han Yunxi. Han Yunxi also didn't expect this. She had planned to eat while watching a good show. Who knew that Long Fei Yi would actually throw a hot potato at her? From a personal point of view, she didn't want to see pig-like teammates like Bailey Yuanlong and Bailey Mingxiang anymore. However, she couldn't look at this problem from a personal point of view. This father and daughter pair's identities were too special. In terms of transgressions, this father and daughter pair had committed the crime of disobeying a military order. Long Fei Yi was the monarch, and the monarch was in the army, so the monarch's orders were military orders. Regardless of whether it was a monarch's order or a military order, anyone who violated it would be killed without mercy. In terms of merit, Bailey Yuanlong had risked his life to fight for her. Long Fei Yi and Bailey Mingxiang had successfully called for reinforcements in the time it took to brew a cup of tea. Whether there were more merits or transgressions, and whether merits could offset demerits, all depended on a single sentence from Long Fei Yi as the master. Long Fei Yi asked her what she thought, so she had to look at this problem from Long Fei Yi's point of view. Bailey Yuanlong was the head of the Mermaid clan and the East Qin Great General. In terms of military affairs, he was Long Fei Yi's right-hand man and the most senior figure in the East Qin camp. If they killed Bailey Yuanlong at this juncture, or stripped him of his great general rank, the impact would be great. It would shake the army's morale and cause the Mermaid clan's dissatisfaction. Moreover, they couldn't find a suitable candidate to completely replace Bailey Yuanlong in the East Qin camp. In the end, this young general in front of them was still a bit immature. Dismissing Bailey Yuanlong would be a momentary pleasure, a sign of irresponsibility to the East Qin army. After all, Bailey Yuanlong's violation of military orders was all because of her, the Western Qin princess, and not because of other military matters. In other matters, Bailey Yuanlong was absolutely obedient to Long Feiyi. In fact, Bailey Yuanlong's stubbornness and suspicion of her, the Western Qin princess, was actually a sign of his duty in a certain sense. Although Han Yunxi was angry, she also felt a bit of admiration. How could a soldier who had lived and fought for revenge all his life forget his hatred so easily? Trust the enemy. Han Yunxi knew that Bailey Yuanlong couldn't be dismissed, and she had long since seen that Long Feiyi had no intention of dismissing Bailey Yuanlong. This was because if Long Feiyi wanted to dismiss Bailey Yuanlong, Long Feiyi wouldn't have remained silent when they left the snake cave. Instead, he would have had the Shadow Guard stop pouring true energy into Bailey Yuanlong. He didn't personally save him, and he didn't stop the Shadow Guard from doing so either. If Bailey Mingxiang was as smart as before, she would have definitely seen through this. Han Yunxi's attitude towards Bailey Mingxiang's punishment had long been clear. Bailey Mingxiang couldn't die, and she couldn't be punished. Therefore, as soon as she returned to the camp, she told Su Donglin to find the female doctor to apply medicine to Bailey Mingxiang. To them, Bailey Mingxiang's identity was even more special than Bailey Yuanlong's. Long Feiyi had spent so much effort to use Bailey Mingxiang as a bait. Even Bai Yanqing had taken the bait, so how could they give up on Bailey Mingxiang at this time? In fact, after returning to the camp, Han Yunxi had already understood everything after her rage subsided. Long Feiyi didn't say anything for a long time. She was also very sure of Long Feiyi's attitude. Han Yunxi was silent. Bailey Yuqi glared at her angrily, but Long Feiyi was eating calmly, as if there was no one else present. Han Yunxi smiled bitterly. Was Long Feiyi so sure that she could handle this matter? Although the attitude towards this matter was clear, how to deal with it was another difficult problem. If Bailey Yuanlong and Bailey Mingxiang were absolved of their crimes, where would Long Feiyi's prestige as a monarch be? Given Bailey Yuanlong's temper, wouldn't he take a mile when given an inch in the future? Disobeying orders without punishment, this kind of precedent absolutely couldn't be set, especially in the military. If they were to be punished, how should they be punished? If they were punished lightly, the result would be the same as not being punished at all. If they were punished heavily, they couldn't do it at this critical juncture. Han Yunxi pondered, but Bailey Yuqi didn't have that much patience. He suddenly kowtowed, "Your Highness, father disobeyed orders and should be beheaded. This general is willing to accept the punishment for father. I ask your Highness to consider the bigger picture and spare father this time." Long Feiyi sneered, "Bailey Yuqi, you mean that my East Qin army can't move forward without your father? This crown prince can't control the overall situation. Although there would be a lot of trouble without Bailey Yuanlong and many of his affairs would have to be pushed back, it didn't mean that his world would fall into chaos without Bailey Yuanlong." Bailey Yuqi was so shocked that he repeatedly denied it. "This general is clumsy with his words. This general misspoke. Please punish me, your Highness." Han Yunxi was angry and amused. Why didn't Bailey Yuqi beg her? Long Feiyi's original words were, "The snake disaster was settled by Han Yunxi. Let's see what she thinks about this matter." Long Feiyi used the three words Han Yunxi and not Western Qin princess, nor did he refer to her as she. This meant that Long Feiyi had already compromised and only wanted to resolve the snake disaster in private, throwing away Bailey Yuanlong's suspicions of the Western Qin princess. As long as they thanked her and admitted their wrongs regarding the snake disaster, Long Feiyi would turn a blind eye for the sake of the bigger picture. Chapter 880. As long as Bailey Yuchi expressed his thanks on behalf of his father and admitted his wrongs, Han Yunxi could help Bailey Yuanlong and Bailey Mingxiang put in a few good words with Long Feiyi. With her persuasion, Long Feiyi would have a way to step down and punish Bailey Yuanlong and Bailey Mingxiang lightly. Han Yunxi looked at the kowtowing Bailey Yuchi and wished she could kick him. Are all soldiers like this? He can't even think straight. Long Feiyi hadn't cast aside the East Qin army's dignity. He hadn't asked them to thank the Western Qin princess, nor had he asked them to bow their heads in front of the entire camp. Instead, he had asked them to admit their wrongs to Han Yunxi and thank her in private. Couldn't they do that? If one side admitted their wrongs and thanked her, the other side compromised and persuaded her, the two sides would be even. Everyone would cast aside their suspicions and status and consider the bigger picture. Wouldn't it be better to put on a show? Bailey Yuchi, on the other hand, had completely ignored her existence and made things worse. It'd be strange if Long Feiyi wasn't angry. Han Yunxi could feel that Long Feiyi couldn't suppress his anger any longer. Wasn't she the same? Long Feiyi's hands were slowly clenched from the table. He was about to speak when Han Yunxi pressed down on them. She told herself to calm down for Long Feiyi's sake. If this Western Qin princess hadn't come to the army, he wouldn't have so much trouble. A calculating look flitted past her eyes before Han Yunxi said, "Your Highness, since you're asking Yunxi, then I'll tell you the truth." Speak. Long Feiyi couldn't tell what Han Yunxi was thinking. Bailey Yuchi glared angrily at him again, his eyes filled with unease. Your Highness, Yunxi personally believes that General Bailey and Mingxiang weren't wrong. General Bailey didn't give out the antidote in time because he was being cautious. After all, it was given to me, the princess of Western Qin. If it turned out to be poison and East Qin was completely wiped out, General Bailey would be the biggest criminal. As soon as Han Yunxi said this, not to mention Bailey Yuchi, even Long Feiyi was surprised. What was this woman trying to do? Han Yunxi continued, in the Snake Cave, although General Bailey and Mingxiang disobeyed military orders, they were still sincere. Which loyal and devoted soldier would abandon his master's safety and flee for his life? Yunxi privately thought that General Bailey would rather defy orders than advance or retreat with His Highness. His courage was commendable. Not only can His Highness not punish General Bailey, he will also be rewarded. No matter what logic it was always decided by the mouth of a person. There was no fixed standard for right and wrong, but arguments were still needed. Han Yunxi silently spurned her own eloquent mouth, but she still continued. As Qinxia sees it, General Bailey should be rewarded with 10 Shadow Guard. 1. To help him heal his wounds, and 2. To protect him from danger. Bailey Yuchi was stunned by her words. He always thought that Han Yunxi would use her position to avenge private wrongs and sow discord between his father and His Highness. He never expected Han Yunxi to say something like this. His father had disobeyed orders twice, so he was already prepared to accept his punishment. But Long Feiyi seemed to have caught on. His lips curved into a smile as he motioned for Han Yunxi to continue. As for Bailey Mingxiang, her contributions were the greatest. If she hadn't risked her life to bring reinforcements, the consequences of the Snake Cave would have been unthinkable. Yunxi thinks that His Highness should reward Mingxiang with a military rank and military merit. Bailey Yuchi's eyes widened at Han Yunxi's words. He wasn't angry, but shocked. Long Feiyi almost couldn't help laughing. All right, I'll do as you say. He agreed easily, as if he'd listened to anything Han Yunxi said. Long Feiyi immediately issued orders to reward Bailey Yuanlong and Bailey Mingxiang as Han Yunxi suggested. They'd only mention their contributions and hide the truth about the Snake Cave, as well as Bailey Yuanlong's disobedience. The soldiers were overjoyed that the snake crisis had been averted, but they also celebrated the Bailey father and daughter's commendations. Bailey Mingxiang had been conferred the rank of sergeant, making her the East Qin Army's first female soldier. Bailey Yuqi couldn't figure out what Han Yunxi meant. He practically ran to Bailey Yuanlong's camp. Bailey Yuanlong woke up in the evening after being treated by the Shadow Guard. He and Bailey Mingxiang had just received the news and were both stunned. "Father, what does Han Yunxi want to do?" Bailey Yuqi asked anxiously. Bailey Yuanlong fell silent as images of Han Yunxi losing control over His Highness surfaced in his mind. Ever since he woke up, he'd been blaming himself and mulling over His Highness's words that night. He finally realized that he could stubbornly refuse to believe Han Yunxi, but he had to trust His Highness's choice and judgment. The matter of the antidote and everything in the snake cave proved that Han Yunxi's heart was as magnanimous as His Highness. It had to be said that Bailey Yuanlong sighed in his heart again. How good would it be if that woman wasn't a Western Qin princess? "Father, what does she mean by this?" Bailey Yuqi was extremely anxious. Bailey Yuanlong suddenly laughed. "Hee, it's a pity she's not a man, but it's also a good thing she's not." Han Yunxi hadn't hit him when he was down and instead showed kindness to him and his daughter. As a result, the father and daughter owed her another favor. The most important thing was that Han Yunxi's reward was to give him 10 shadow guards. It seemed like a reward, but she was actually sending 10 shadow guards to monitor his every move and restrain him. If Mingxiang was given a military rank, then once Mingxiang lured Bailey Yuanlong out and completed her mission, she would have to stay in the army and wouldn't be able to stay by their side to serve them. "Han Yunxi, you've played a good trick." She really was smart and rational. Perhaps even His Highness wasn't as calm and rational as her at times. If she were a man, she would be His Highness's #1 rival. Bailey Yuanlong was both resentful and impressed. It had to be said that Han Yunxi's actions were much more open and aboveboard than taking the opportunity to avenge a private grudge. She took the bigger picture into consideration. Only this scheme of hers could make His Highness let him and Mingxiang off. Otherwise, with His Highness's temper, even if he didn't punish them severely for the bigger picture, he would still punish them in private. Bailey Yuanlong was completely at his wits' end when it came to Han Yunxi. Bailey Mingxiang's eyes narrowed. She wasn't the least bit happy about receiving a military rank. She was already weak after a night of torment, but after hearing this news, she became depressed and exuded an aura of despair. Not long after, Su Donglin came over. "Miss Mingxiang, His Highness has ordered you to pack up and follow them north tomorrow." Only then did Bailey Mingxiang wake up from her world of despair. "North, where are we going?" "His Highness has his own plans. How can we, as servants, ask too much?" Su Donglin countered. "Yes." Bailey Mingxiang immediately nodded. Mingxiang accepts the order. By this time, Long Feiyi had already used his actions to praise Han Yunxi. Han Yunxi's lips were a bit swollen, but she couldn't do anything about him. Long Feiyi and Bailey Yuanlong had the same thought. "If you were a man, you and I would definitely have a battle." "We already had a battle," Han Yunxi said seriously. Being together was too wonderful. They would always mistakenly believe that they could be united and walk side by side, forgetting that they would eventually meet on the battlefield. Seeing that Long Feiyi's eyes were a bit dim, Han Yunxi changed the topic. "Should we inform Ningqing? After all, this is a matter of sowing discord. Bai Yanqing has made a move on the East Qin side, so perhaps she will also make a move on the Western Qin side. I've already sent an envoy over." Long Feiyi indifferently replied. Not only did he send someone to inform Ningqing, he also asked Ningqing to create an illusion that Han Yunxi was in the Western Qin army. Han Yunxi was finally relieved. She glanced at the secret letters in his hand and suddenly thought of something. Gu still hasn't replied to me. Could something have happened? With Ning Cheng's temper, it would be strange if he didn't immediately fight with Gu for Baiyu. After all, this was Ning Cheng's territory, so Han Yunxi had to worry about Gu and Mu Ling. Long Fei Yi and Gu must have been enemies in the past life. Whenever he heard Han Yunxi mention the 3 words, Gu, he would feel disdain. Cold as he said, don't worry about him. Even if the sky collapses, nothing will happen to him. Han Yunxi did not say anything else. She was thinking that she would have sued Dong Lin Chek if the letter had been sent. After being delayed for so long, the food had already turned cold. Long Fei Yi had Granny Zhao bring some more food over and the 2 of them sat across from each other. They quietly ate and no longer talked about business. Han Yunxi picked up food for Long Fei Yi and only placed it on his rice. Long Fei Yi directly placed it next to her mouth and fed her. When night fell, Han Yunxi was exhausted and went to bed early. Long Fei Yi, on the other hand, was still unable to rest. He had to leave the next day, so he had to deal with all of the accounts. Han Yunxi had already woken up when Long Fei Yi was just about to fall asleep. She was about to get up, but when she saw him come in, she immediately stopped and pretended to sleep. He did not hug her for fear of touching her wound. Instead, he lay down beside her and slept on the same pillow as her. He pulled her hand and placed it on his abdomen, pressing it with his large hand. Han Yunxi waited for a long time before she gently moved. When she saw that Long Fei Yi did not notice, she was certain that he had fallen asleep. She pulled her hand away and sat up. After waiting for a while, when she saw that Long Fei Yi still did not move, she carefully pulled out his left hand and removed the gauze. She saw that the bite mark was very deep, and the originally bright red mark had darkened a little. Silly! Her heart ached and she wanted to laugh at the same time. She took out the medicine that she had secretly concocted and applied it gently. The autumn night in the military camp was extremely quiet. Under the dim light, she was focused and careful, as if she was a thief, afraid that she would be discovered if she made any big movements. If it were any other time, applying medicine would not be a problem at all. But this time, it took her a lot of effort to do it. She secretly exhaled. Just as she was about to bandage the wound, Long Fei Yi suddenly said, Han Yunxi, do you really like children? Han Yunxi jumped in fright, and her heart almost jumped out of her chest. She looked at Long Fei Yi in panic. Long Fei Yi slowly opened his eyes and got up. As he wiped off the ointment on his hand, he asked, do you like boys or girls? He still remembered what Granny Zhao had said during the day. Han Yunxi looked at his hand and said seriously, it'll really leave a scar. It won't look good. Long Fei Yi admired her masterpiece in his hand and said, when I was young, Tang Li told me a legend about birthmarks. He said that birthmarks were actually bite marks left by lovers in their previous lives. If Chapter 881. If Long Fei Yi wanted to say something but stopped. He realized that Han Yunxi didn't seem to be interested in the bite mark. You don't believe it? Long Fei Yi asked. Long Fei Yi was such a cold person. How rare was it for him to come up with such a romantic legend? Han Yunxi actually wasn't interested. How extravagant. If all the women in the world knew about this, they would trample on Han Yunxi until her soul dissipated and she never reincarnated. However, Han Yunxi could afford to be extravagant. Han Yunxi wasn't interested and didn't believe it. As a doctor and Long Fei Ye's wife, she was most concerned about whether the wound on his hand would be infected and whether it would leave a scar. She wasn't surprised that Tang Li knew about this kind of lie to deceive girls. However, Long Fei Yi actually listened and believed it. This was too unbelievable. Long Fei-yi, do you believe this kind of legend? Han Yunshi asked in return. Long Fei-yi gently rubbed the bite mark on his hand and chuckled. You bit me. I'm willing to believe it. If what? Han Yunshi was curious. Unexpectedly, Long Fei-yi didn't say anything. It's a secret. Han Yunshi was originally just a little curious. However, when Long Fei-yi kept her in suspense, she immediately became anxious. Tell me, if what? Long Fei-yi didn't answer. He took the gauze and bandaged the bite mark again. He didn't forget to warn her, don't have any ideas about it. If what? Han Yunshi looked wronged. If he kept her in suspense like this, how was she going to sleep in the long night? Long Fei-yi ignored her and lay down on his side. Han Yunshi didn't give up. Dragging her injured legs, she turned sideways with difficulty and tickled him. Say it. Long Fei-yi let her scratch him, smiling without saying anything. Han Yunshi scratched harder and harder. Long Fei-yi finally couldn't stand it anymore. He pressed her hands on his body and said, If you move again, I won't forgive you. This warning was too effective. Han Yunshi immediately knew her place. Long Fei-yi hugged her and asked, Han Yunshi, do you like boys or girls? Han Yunshi snorted. It's a secret. Long Fei-yi burst out laughing. Are you going to tell me or not? Han Yunshi pursed her lips. Her attitude was firm. Long Fei-yi immediately scratched her. Han Yunshi panicked. You can't treat a disabled person like this. Long Fei-yi, hey. Her legs couldn't move, and when she finally managed to sit up to avoid him, he pushed her down again. He tickled her until she couldn't stop laughing and almost couldn't breathe. Are you going to tell me? I'm not going to tell you even if you beat me to death. Long Fei-yi was ruthless. He bit off her collar. Han Yunshi was shocked. After that, he stopped tickling her and was no longer domineering. He suddenly became gentle. Han Yunshi realized that her legs weren't completely immobile. Under his guidance, she obediently cooperated. Just like that, she was immersed in his gentleness and forgot everything else. That night, Han Yunshi didn't know how she fell asleep. Long Fei-yi, who had started eating meat, really made it difficult for her to bear. Perhaps because she was too tired during this period of time, Han Yunshi slept until noon the next day. When she woke up, Long Fei-yi had already prepared everything. Granny Zhao was waiting at the side to serve her. It wasn't that Long Fei-yi found it inconvenient, but that he didn't understand some things. Your Highness, leave it to this servant. It'll be done very quickly. Granny Zhao stood by the door and said with a smile. Who knew that Long Fei-yi would glance at her and whisper, in the future, don't let her see those nonsensical things. Other than those two little black books, what else could he be talking about? Granny Zhao almost thought that His Highness liked those two books. She stared blankly until His Highness left and the princess called her. Only then did she regain her senses. In order to hide her identity, Han Yunshi was still dressed as a guard. She didn't know if Long Fei-yi had gone to see Bailey Yuanlong this morning, but she didn't want to ask. After leaving the barracks, she was like a bird that had been set free. Her body and mind were suddenly relaxed. The carriage stopped at the northern part of the barracks. Aside from the shadow guard and poison guards who were secretly following them, there was only the driver, Uncle Gao, and Bailey Mingxiang. Uncle Gao stood next to Long Fei-yi's private carriage, while Su Donglin and Bailey Mingxiang stood next to a smaller carriage. Han Yunshi glanced at the carriage and saw that it was equipped with a wheelchair. She thought that she probably didn't have many opportunities to use a wheelchair. Han Yunshi hurriedly let Long Fei-yi enter the carriage. She didn't want Bailey Mingxiang to run over crying and apologizing to her and Long Fei Yi again. Fortunately, Bailey Mingxiang didn't do that. She respectfully lowered her head and didn't even look at them. After they set off, Su Donglin whispered as he drove, "Miss Mingxiang, His Highness told me to confirm with you that you've brought that thing with you. It's very important for this trip." Bailey Mingxiang grasped the thing in her sleeve and said seriously, "I've brought it with me. Please rest assured, Your Highness. Mingxiang will definitely not disappoint you." After a while, Su Donglin sighed softly. "Miss Mingxiang, His Highness is magnanimous. Instead of punishing you, he rewarded you. If you complete His Highness's task this time, you'll definitely be promoted when you return. When the time comes, you'll stay in the army and naturally won't have to marry outside. You'll have a stable life, unlike your sisters." Bailey Mingxiang was silent for a long time before replying faintly, "Meeting His Highness is Mingxiang's good fortune accumulated over several lifetimes. It's good that you know. Those people in the army don't know the truth about His Highness keeping you by his side. They're blindly kicking up a fuss. Don't take it to heart." Su Donglin added. How could Su Donglin be so meticulous? Wasn't this what Xiao Mama had told him before he left? Although she was in the carriage, Bailey Mingxiang's face burned red when she heard Su Donglin's words. That night at the bonfire party, when everyone was kicking up a fuss, she was still calm. However, after being reminded by Su Donglin in private, she felt that her last secret had been revealed to the public. Liking His Highness was such an overconfident thing. She clearly knew that she was overconfident, but she couldn't help it and couldn't control herself. If feelings could be controlled, they wouldn't be called feelings. She had originally planned to hide this secret deep in her heart for the rest of her life, but who knew that His Highness would take a fancy to her and keep her by his side, using her as a guide? Who knew that everyone would kick up a fuss at the bonfire party? Who knew that her father, who had always wanted to marry her off, would covet the position of empress just because Han Yunxi was the princess of Western Qin? All of this had happened too suddenly and too coincidentally. Today's situation made her feel as if she was standing naked in front of everyone. There was only one word to describe it: shame. Why couldn't she secretly like him? She had steeled her heart to hide this secret for the rest of her life. Why couldn't she even secretly like him now? She really didn't have any other thoughts. She stayed by the princess's side to sincerely serve and guard her. In fact, even if the princess didn't give her a military rank, she wouldn't have stayed after completing her mission. When the last secret in her heart was revealed to the public, how could she face the princess? How could she face His Highness? Bailey Mingxiang felt so bad that she wanted to cry. She suddenly missed the days in the Duke of Qin's mansion and pill fiend pharmacy. The princess taught her the art of poison and medicine step by step. She was clearly younger than her, but she was like an older sister. The pitiful thing about Bailey Mingxiang was that she treated Long Fei and Han Yunxi as her everything. Long Fei, on the other hand, had never placed her in his eyes. Han Yunxi, on the other hand, didn't care about her as much as before either. At this moment, Long Fei Yi and Han Yunxi were discussing how to lure out Bai Yanqing. Long Fei Yi had already received a clear message from the Shadow Guard that the Shadow Guard, who had been tailing Su Xiaoyu for the past 3 days, would have a chance to sneak to Su Xiaoyu's side and contact her. As long as they could contact Su Xiaoyu, it would be easy to lure out Bai Yanqing. You mean to say that Bai Yanqing isn't at Su Xiaoyu's place? Han Yunxi asked seriously. Su Xiaoyu is being held captive within Tianning's borders. It's called Black Tower, and it's very close to the three-way black market. The Shadow Guard has been tailing her for a long time, but he hasn't found any traces of Bai Yanqing, Long Fei Yi said, then added, perhaps he's already been there, but the shadow guard didn't notice. The shadow guard has only been able to get close to Black Tower recently. You want to borrow Su Xiaoyu's mouth to reveal the secret of the perplexing butterfly illusion and lure Bai Yanqing to Black Tower. Han Yunxi was very surprised. She had always thought that Bailey Mingxiang would be the one to lure Bai Yanqing out. Long Fei Yi had been waiting for Bai Yanqing to make a move against Bailey Mingxiang this entire time, but Bai Yanqing hadn't shown himself yet. Long Fei Yi had long since given up. Yes, the perplexing butterfly illusion belongs to the poison sect. My imperial mother paid a huge price to find it in the poison sect's forbidden grounds. If Bai Yanqing is a direct descendant of the poison sect, he'll definitely know about it. Long Fei Yi explained, he's definitely looking for the perplexing butterfly illusion as well. As long as Su Xiaoyu asks, he'll definitely go personally. Han Yunxi finally understood what kind of trap Long Fei Yi had dug. She asked, then Bailey Mingxiang. Long Fei Yi's eyes flashed with a sinister light. If we lure Bai Yanqing out this time, we can't let him escape no matter the price. We don't have time in Northern Li. Bailey Mingxiang is the key to killing Bai Yanqing. Han Yunxi understood. When Bai Yanqing saw Bailey Mingxiang, he'd fear the fact that Bailey Mingxiang was a dual cultivator with Long Fei Yi. He'd definitely take Bailey Mingxiang's life first. As long as Bai Yanqing attacked Bailey Mingxiang would have a chance to target Bai Yanqing with the object in his hands. That's a good idea. Han Yunxi muttered to herself. Long Fei Yi and Han Yunxi secretly headed north while waiting for news from the Shadow Guard and Su Xiaoyu. Han Yunxi believed that Su Xiaoyu was a clever girl. As long as the Shadow Guard had a way to get close to her, she'd definitely take care of things. They'd already set out, but Ning Qing had just arrived at the capital to see Gu. This trip will be dangerous. Miss Ling shouldn't go. Ning Cheng's tone sounded more like an order than a discussion. Gu's eyes flashed coldly before he wrapped an arm around Mu Ling's shoulders and chuckled. This young master's a clingy girl. She follows me wherever I go, and I've gotten used to it. Without her around, I feel uncomfortable all over. He purposely glanced at Ning Qing. Say, what do you think we should do? I didn't expect seventh young master to dote on this girl as well as Poison Lass. Ning Qing put on a fake smile, a little doubtful. Ning had almost killed Mu Ling before, but Gu hadn't even spared her a glance. Gu suddenly grew serious as he let go of Mu Ling and patted Ning Qing on the shoulder. Her big sister told me to do it. If anything happens to her, this young master won't be done with her. This young master has no other choice. Ning Cheng's suspicions were dispelled as he ordered someone to bring Bai Yuqiao over and prepare to set out. Because of Gu Qishao's words, Mu Linger's mood soared to the 9 heavens before plummeting back down. It took her a while to calm down. She felt that something was off with Qi Gij, but she couldn't put her finger on it. That day, Ning Qing and Gu set out north in the direction of three-way black market. They seemed to be arriving before Long Fei Yi's group. Chapter 882. As Long Fei Yi and Han Yunxi traveled north, Medical City and Medicine City sent them a lot of medicine. After receiving Long Fei Yi's letter, the King of Medicine from Medicine Hut also sent the best ointment from Medicine Hut. The most effective ointment in the world had already been used by Gu Beiyue. The medicine they sent couldn't heal Han Yunxi in a day or two, but it would more or less shorten the duration of her illness. If Han Yunxi took medicine on time every day and didn't suffer a second injury, she could basically recover in about a month. Although this trip was important, Long Fei Yi still put Han Yunxi's injuries first. Along the way, he didn't forget to eat 3 meals. He also didn't travel day and night like before, finding an inn to spend the night almost every day. That night, they arrived at the county town very late and checked into an inn. Long Fei-yi carried Han Yunxi out of the carriage. Su Donglin pushed the wheelchair over, only to discover that Han Yunxi had already fallen asleep. "No need," Long Fei-yi said indifferently. Su Donglin hurriedly led the way. Bailey Mingxiang watched them from behind for a long time before following. His Highness and the princess didn't have any servant girls by their side. Only Su Donglin accompanied them, but Su Donglin was a man, so it wasn't convenient. The princess's legs were also inconvenient, so His Highness had to personally attend to many things. Along the way, she was impulsive several times and wanted to volunteer herself, but in the end, she didn't dare to say a word. When Bailey Mingxiang went upstairs, Su Donglin was passing by with water. She hesitated for a while before opening her mouth. "Bodyguard Su, how about I do it?" His Highness said that there's no need to wait on her. "I'll just bring the water in." "Miss Mingxiang, you should rest early." Su Donglin left after speaking. Bailey Mingxiang gritted her teeth and silently left. How could she rest? Along the way, there wasn't a single good night's sleep. In the middle of the night, after tossing and turning in bed for a long time, she finally got up and stood by the railing outside the door, staring blankly at the starry sky above the courtyard. After a while, she still couldn't help but turn her head and look at the tightly shut door. She thought, His Highness and the princess must be asleep, right? Just like that, Bailey Mingxiang stood outside the door for the whole night. No one knew what he was thinking. In fact, Long Fei-yi and Han Yunxi did not sleep. These days, Long Fei-yi would transfer internal energy to Han Yunxi from time to time. With the strengthening of her inner strength, Han Yunxi began to learn how to use her inner strength. Every time Long Fei-yi transferred his inner strength to her, she would need a period of time to recover. Just like that, Han Yunxi, who was known to be a good-for-nothing in martial arts, had quietly become a martial arts expert. The next day, just as she was about to leave the inn, the shadow guard delivered Gu's reply. Under Long Fei-yi's gaze, Han Yunxi opened the letter. Gu replied, "No matter what, I will complete the task. Bai Yuqiao has yet to confess. If there is any progress, I will contact you again." This reply was within Han Yunxi's expectations, so she didn't think much of it. Long Fei-yi glanced at it expressionlessly and didn't comment. "Don't worry. Although he won't help you, he won't ruin your plans either." Han Yunxi smiled. Long Fei-yi snorted softly, but didn't say anything else. Han Yunxi had asked Gu to interrogate Bai Yuqiao in order to find Gu Beiyue, not to get involved in the struggle between Eastern, Western Qin, and Bai Yanqing. Han Yunxi only hoped that Bai Yuqiao would quickly confess and reveal Gu Beiyue's whereabouts. When the time came, she and Long Fei-yi would lead Bai Yanqing to the Black Tower and lure the tiger away from the mountain so that Gu could save Gu Beiyue. Han Yunxi was about to reply to Gu when Long Fei-yi stopped her. "Don't reveal his whereabouts. After all, he is with Ning Qing." Han Yunxi thought about it and felt that he was right. If they could avoid correspondence, they should avoid it. After all, it wasn't absolutely safe to send letters by Goshawk. After leaving the inn, they continued to head north. Han Yunxi and the rest had only been gone for about 10 days, but Ning Qing and Gu had already arrived at the three-way black market. At this time, they stopped at the entrance of the three-way black market. Ning Qing wanted to continue walking, but Gu stopped him. "Bai Yuqiao, it's only half a day's journey from here to the Black Tower, right?" "Yes, if we're fast, it won't even take half a day." Bai Yuqiao answered truthfully, a complicated look flashing past his eyes. The three-way black market was not only close to the Black Tower, but also to the three-way battlefield. After the three-way battlefield, they would be in northernly territory. She had steeled her heart to betray her master, but that didn't mean that she had steeled her heart to rely on Ningqing. She was constantly worried about her senior brother Jun Yixia. When they arrived at the three-way black market, her worry grew, and she subconsciously thought of escaping. She thought that as long as she could escape to Northern Li, it would be easy to contact her senior brother. Most of Northern Li's southern regions were under her senior brother's control. Bai Yuqiao, is your master in the Black Tower right now? Gu asked next. I can't be sure, but I promise that even if master isn't here, I'll definitely lure him to the Black Tower. Bai Yuqiao vowed. Then we'll stop at the three-way black market and scout out the situation first before making further plans. Gu shrugged his shoulders and looked towards Ningqing with a grin. We're already at the entrance. Shouldn't Master Ning do his part as a host? The three-way black market had a long history and a complicated network of powers. It was much more complicated than Tianning's black market. Cloud Realm Trade Consortium didn't have much power in Tianning's black markets, but they were definitely half a master in the three-way battlefield. That was because the consortium was backed by the D clan, a merchant clan with as long a history as the three-way black market. Ning Cheng's face was expressionless as he said, please. Not just anyone could enter the three-way black market, especially. It required proof of identity and qualifications, as well as multiple inspections. But with Ningqing leading the way, Gu's group used a secret passage that allowed them to pass unobstructed. Mu Ling and Bai Yuqiao both knew of the three-way black market's existence, but Mu Ling wasn't interested. Bai Yuqiao, on the other hand, couldn't help but sigh in amazement the entire way. She didn't know much about the D clan, but never expected them to have such deep pockets and influence among the people. She couldn't help but glance up at Ningqing, only to see him as lofty as a mountain. He was cold and noble, but held so much power in his hands despite his young age. She couldn't help but compare Ningqing to her senior brother. If senior brother hadn't been tricked by master, he could be like Ningqing or Long Feiyi, holding great power and holding his own. Although the three-way black market was Cloud Realm Continent's largest black market, largest didn't refer to the area it occupied, but the volume of transactions it made. A single day's worth of goods traded here was worth 10 days' worth of revenue for an entire prefecture. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that its wealth rivaled that of a nation. Ningqing settled Gu's group in Cloud Realm Trade Consortium's headquarters, the most luxurious palace in the three-way black market. Bai Yuqiao was quickly locked up by the guards, while Gu and Mu Ling stayed next door. As soon as Ningqing left, Mu Ling immediately went to find Gu. Qi brother, why did you come here? This is Ningcheng's territory. Mu Ling murmured. Gu Qishao was currently lying comfortably on the soft chaise lounge, his eyes closed as he rested. Rushing all the way here had tired him to death. Qi brother, Mu Ling tugged at his sleeve as Gu elegantly extended a hand in front of Mu Ling Help give Qi brother a massage. Mu Ling didn't have the courage to refuse, but happily took his hand and began to massage it gently. Still, she didn't forget to remind him, Qi brother, this is Ningcheng's territory. What's wrong with his territory? Gu asked lazily. Mu Ling didn't know how to answer, so she thought for a while before saying, Qi brother, are you suspecting Ningqing of something? Gu's eyes widened. Even you can tell. He had long suspected Ningqing. If even Mu Ling, this stupid girl, could tell, then wouldn't Ningqing have long seen through it? Mu Ling said seriously, Qi brother, I saw through it long ago, but Ningqing probably didn't. Because Ningqing doesn't understand you, but I do. Gu raised his eyebrows and looked at Mu Ling, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. What do you understand about me? Mu Ling couldn't give a specific answer. Anyway, I just understand you. I guarantee that you must be suspecting Ningqing of something, right? Gu gestured for Mu Ling to come closer with his finger. Mu Ling immediately moved closer, so close that Gu had no choice but to step back a little to put some distance between them. He said in a low voice, "Girl, since you've seen through it, you should continue acting. If you let the cat out of the bag and ruin Chi brother's plans." Ha! Gu laughed dryly and warned, "Chi brother isn't done with you." Unexpectedly, Mu Ling giggled. Ling just wants to be done with Chi brother. I won't be done with him for the rest of my life. Gu was instantly stunned. Mu Ling saw that he was stunned and her smile immediately froze. She then realized that she had been too happy and said what was on her mind. Gu quickly came back to his senses and laughed. "Good, you've learned how to tease people. Ha, looks like your sister doesn't have to worry about you not being able to get married." Looking at Chi brother's flirtatious smile and bright smiling eyes, Mu Ling almost couldn't help but blurt out, "Ling won't marry anyone else but Chi brother." However, she didn't say it in the end. It wasn't that she didn't dare to say it, but she was afraid. Afraid that if she said it, it would give him a clear reason to reject her. Many people didn't dare to express their love, not because they didn't have the courage to pursue it, but because they were afraid that they would lose all opportunities. Chi brother, Ling will wait for you to grow old, wait for you to be unable to run, wait for no one to want you, wait for you to die. Ling must live well and live for 15 minutes longer than you do. We can't be together when we're alive, but we must be together when we die. Chi brother, Ling doesn't even know how much I love you." Pain and happiness were hidden in her heart. Mu Ling was still smiling. She had already learned to smile like Gu and could smile brightly at any time. "Chi brother, what do you suspect about Ningqing? Did he bully my sister?" Mu Ling asked. Gu said in a low voice, "That letter is a lie." "How can that be?" Mu Ling was shocked. "Poison Girl told us to interrogate Bai Yuqiao and try to rescue Gu Beiyue. She didn't ask us to help Ningqing deal with Bai Yanqing," Gu said seriously. Gu was always laughing and joking, but he was very careful and shrewd. Even the slightest clue couldn't escape his eyes. If Han Yunxi hadn't told him and Mu Ling in private, then Ning Cheng's forged letter would have fooled him. However, Han Yunxi had already told him and Mu Ling How could Ning Qing hide it from him when he didn't know the situation? Han Yunxi was most concerned about Gu Beiyue. The letter mentioned 3 things, but it didn't mention Gu Beiyue. Instead, it emphasized that they should help Ning Qing find Bai Yanqing. If this wasn't forged, then what was it? Chapter 883. With Gu's reminder, Mu Ling recalled what Han Yunxi had said to her and Gu. After comparing it to the secret letter, she finally understood. She asked anxiously, "Chi Gij, Ning Qing couldn't have done anything to my big sis, right? How could Ning Qing do this? Is he going to betray the Western Qin royal family?" Han Yunxi was the princess of the Western Qin royal family and Ning Cheng's master. Since Ning Cheng had forged Han Yunxi's secret letter, he must have kept the real letter. What did Han Yunxi write in the real letter? Tell the truth. Ask for help. What was the reason for Western Qin stopping the war? Chi brother, Ning Cheng wouldn't have put my sister under house arrest like the Chu family, right? He wouldn't want to use my sister as a puppet, right? Mu Ling's heart was in a mess. Gu had been very worried on the way here. He had already sent people to investigate, but it was a pity that they couldn't find any useful information. The people he sent could enter the Western Qin barracks, but they couldn't reach the main camp. He didn't dare send any more secret letters, afraid that they would fall into Ning Chang's hands and he would be exposed. There were several times when he wanted to ask around in East Chin, but he endured it in the end. What was there to ask that fellow Long Fei Yi? If he let Long Fei Yi know about the situation in Western Chin, he would only be laughed at. Gu could only stay calm and start with Ning Ching. No matter what Ning Ching was planning, at least he didn't dare to do anything to Han Yunxi. He could only stay calm and restrain Ning Ching. He didn't believe that when the time came, he wouldn't be able to exchange Ning Ching for his poison girl with the Western Chin army. Chi brother, tell me, what should we do now? Mu Ling stamped her feet anxiously. Why are you in such a hurry? Gu asked unhappily. Why isn't Chi brother in a hurry this time? Mu Ling couldn't figure out why Chi brother hadn't gone looking for Han Yunxi in Tianning Palace like a madman. Because Poison Lass has forgiven me. Gu chuckled. He was just following his heart and could not be considered impulsive. He had been impulsive the last time because he was worried that Poison Lass would ignore him. As long as Poison Lass forgave him, his world and his heart would not crumble no matter what. Mu Ling avoided his brilliant gaze and asked, Chi brother, then why did you come to Ning Chang's territory? Gu stood up and rapped Mu Ling on the head. Who told you that the three-way black market is Ning Chang's territory? Mu Ling looked aggrieved. You said he's the host. Mu Ling suddenly realized something and grabbed Gu's hand. Chi brother, what do you mean? Gu smiled coldly. Cloud Realm Trade Consortium's influence in the three-way black market has long declined. Ning Ching can't even count as half a master now. Mu Ling sucked in a cold breath. There were several big deals in Myriad Merchant Hall waiting for his decision. It was late at night, but the black market was at its busiest. Ning Ching listened to the deacon's report on the situation of the black market in the past 6 months, and also patrolled a few auction halls. He didn't know that Ning Jing and Tang Li were quarreling at the entrance of the three-way black market. Ning Jing was no longer dressed as a man, but was dressed in a simple but elegant yellow dress. She wore a light muslin waistcoat and her hair was combed into a horse bun, the very image of a noble lady. When she was dressed as a man, everyone could tell she was a girl. But now that she was a woman, even Cloud Realm Trade Consortium's people couldn't tell that she was Ning Jing. After all, very few people in the world had ever seen her in her graceful, dainty beauty. Although she wasn't living as well as before, she seemed to have put on some weight and lost her previous slender frame. Instead, it was Tang Li who looked much thinner by her side. Tang Li and her were heading north to Northern Li to find that man called Ouyang Jing and get Ning Jing's personal seal. When they passed by three-way black market this evening, Ning Jing insisted on dragging Tang Li inside to play. Don't think I don't know that Myriad Merchant Hall in three-way black market is your Cloud Realm Trade Consortium's true headquarters. Tang Li exposed her bluntly. You know quite a bit about Cloud Realm Trade Consortium. Ning Jing laughed coldly. Tang Li, was it really a coincidence that we met by chance back then? Long Fei Yi had long known about the relationship between Cloud Realm Trade Consortium and the D Clan's Ning family. How could Tang Li not know? Although she was the one who drugged Tang Li back then, it looked like Tang Li had taken advantage of her while the Ning family suffered losses. You're thinking too much. If I knew your identity back then, I wouldn't have touched you even if I had to find a prostitute. Tang Li's mocking smile made Ning Jing's eyes hurt. The more it hurt, the prouder she smiled. It's a pity I didn't know earlier. You were raped by me. Tang Li narrowed his eyes. Are you leaving or not? It's been a long time since I spent money, so my hands are itching. Let me go buy a few things, then we'll leave at daybreak. I promise I won't expose my identity, Ning Jing said seriously. No way. Tang Li grabbed her by the arm and tried to drag her away, but Ning Jing's attitude suddenly softened. She wrapped her arms around Tang Li's neck and looked up at him like a spoiled child. Ah Li, just do as I say. Just do as I say. I promise I won't expose my identity, I swear. Ah Li. Tang Li's expression was calm as he pretended not to hear anything and strode forward. Ning Jing wouldn't give up. Her small hands gently caressed Tang Li's face as she said tenderly, Li, we already agreed that if you found my seal, you'd protect me from death. I'd stay in the Tang clan forever and stay by your side. A day as husband and wife means endless devotion. We've been husband and wife for almost a year now, so how could I go back on my word? Tang Li looked away as a cold smile rose to his lips. He laughed at Ning Jing's preposterous words and said, You're thinking too much. Who wants you to stay by my side forever? Then you're letting me go. Ning Jing arched a brow. Tang Li's heart felt stifled as he grew irritated. He didn't hold her anymore, but set her down and dragged her away by the hand. But Ning Jing suddenly hugged him and forced him to look at her. Li, actually, I don't want to go back to Cloud Realm Trade Consortium either. I didn't complete my mission, so I don't know what kind of punishment I'll face when I go back. Ning Jing won't let me manage Cloud Realm Trade Consortium anymore. Maybe one day he'll give me to the consortium's old man to play with. Enough. Tang Li said sternly. Even he didn't know why he was so angry. Being imprisoned in the Tang clan for the rest of my life is better than going back to Cloud Realm Trade Consortium. I'm not an idiot. Ning Jing had never spoken so gently to Tang Li before. Tang Li knew she was faking it, but he couldn't bear to interrupt her. Perhaps after this, he'd never hear such a gentle voice from this woman again. Li, I was wrong in the past. Let's start over. Ning Jing hesitated before circling her arms around Tang Li's neck and forcing him to look into her eyes. Li, I've fallen in love with you. Tang Li gave a start before he flew into a rage and shoved her aside. Ning Jing, have you played enough? Do you think I'm a 3-year-old child that's easy to trick? I'm telling you now, even if you really do fall in love with me, I don't have any feelings for you. Put away your laughable face. Ning Jing's faintly sorrowful expression vanished. Although she was acting, it was still a test. Tang Li had given her a clear answer. She chuckled to herself. Why bother? She'd already steeled her heart to leave, so why put on such an act? She tidied up her messy hair and said coldly, Fine, I'll tell you the truth. Myriad Merchant Hall has 3 great treasuries. I have the key to one of them, so I want to take the money with me. Come with me and I'll split it with you. Everything I said just then was true. I won't have a good life if I go back to Cloud Realm Trade Consortium. I just want to take back what belongs to me. A complicated look flickered past Tang Li's eyes. He didn't care for money, but this was a chance to infiltrate Myriad Merchant Hall. Even if Ning Jing tried to play tricks in the black market, he could deal with her. After all, the Ning family didn't have the final say in 3-way black market. Chapter 884. Although the waters of the 3-way black market were deep, that was only for ordinary people. Tang Li wasn't afraid of the waters here. However, there were some conditions he had to discuss with Ning Jing. He looked at Ning Jing from head to toe before saying coldly, How much silver do you want back? Ning Jing silently exhaled in relief. She knew that Tang Li's question meant she had a chance. I can't estimate the amount of silver and land deeds. In any case, it's enough for me to spend for the rest of my life, Ning Jing replied. She had no idea how much silver was in the treasury, nor did she have a key. Myriad Merchant Hall's wealth was in Ning Chang's hands alone. No matter how much she sacrificed for Cloud Realm Trade Consortium, she had no right to claim it. Actually, she had hidden away quite a bit of money over the years. Even if she squandered it daily, there was no need for her to take such a risk and steal from Myriad Merchant Hall. She'd only found such an excuse to fool Tang Li. Even that Ouyang Jing person wasn't real. She was certain that she'd have to pass through the three-way black market on her way to Northern Li. As long as she could get there, she'd have a chance to shake off Tang Li. Tang Li, let's meet again after this night. Let's never meet again. D-Clan, let's meet again after this night. We won't meet again in our next lives. Tang Li had no idea of the truth. He only assumed that Ning Jing had gone to the black market to find a chance to send a message to Ning Qing and ask for help from the Ning clan. He wasn't coveting Myriad Merchant Hall's wealth, but asking Ning Jing like that just now was a test to see the true extent of Myriad Merchant Hall's wealth. What, your Myriad Merchant Hall only has that much in its treasury? Nothing else? Tang Li probed again. Of course Ning Jing knew there was more. But even if she was leaving the D clan, she wouldn't reveal any more of its secrets. She arched her brows and smiled. Of course there's more, but I can't take it away, nor do I want it. Come on, you'll know once you see. All right. I'll go with you. Upon hearing Tang Li's words, Ning Jing's mood, which had been gloomy for the past few days, suddenly brightened up. For some reason, she also felt a little sad. Sad. She was such a pragmatic person that she had never felt this way since she was young. Ning Jing did not want to think too much, nor did she dare to think too much. She decisively ignored the feelings deep in her heart and patted Tang Li's shoulder casually. Since you trust me, I'll give you half of the money when I get it. When we return to the Tang sect, take good care of me. How about that? Her eyes were bright and her face was full of generosity. She spoke as if she was telling the truth. Tang Li didn't answer her. He took out a pair of exquisite white jade bracelets from his sleeve. Ning Jing's expression changed when she saw the bracelets. Tang Li, what do you mean by this? This item was called the torture bracelet, and it was a type of hidden weapon of the Tang sect. It was specifically used to bind the hands of the enemy. Its function was very similar to handcuffs, but it was far more useful. The size of the two jade bracelets could be automatically adjusted according to the size of the wrist. Once it was put on, it would automatically adjust to a state where it couldn't be broken free. The two bracelets were connected by a thin line that was so thin that it couldn't be seen with the naked eye. The thin line could only be stretched 1 meter long at most. Even the most powerful of blades couldn't cut this thin line. If this pair of bracelets were worn on one person's hands, that person would basically be unable to use both hands. If they were worn on two people's hands, those two people would have to follow each other like shadows. The furthest distance between them would never be more than 1 meter. Under Ning Jing's frightened gaze, Tang Li slowly put one of the bracelets on his hand. After putting it on, he raised his hand and waved it in front of Ning Jing. Does it look good? Ning Jing forced herself to suppress the resentment in her eyes and didn't say anything. Tang Li picked up another table, his icy demeanor replaced by a roguish grin. Jing Jing, this husband will help you put it on. Us husband and wife will never leave each other for the rest of our lives, all right? For a moment, Ning Jing was a little absent-minded. It was as if she had returned to a few months ago, when he always teased her rudely. It was as if they were really a quarrelsome couple, a loving couple. She looked at it for a long time and didn't say anything. No. If not, let's continue to go north. Tang Li was still smiling, but he was very ruthless. Ning Jing gently gritted her teeth. She looked calm, but her heart was already turned upside down. She knew that Tang Li wouldn't give in anymore. If she refused, they would continue to go north. If they continued to go north, where would she find Ouyang Jing? She was completely unfamiliar with Northernly, and it would be even more difficult to find a chance to escape. In the end, it was very likely that Tang Li would discover her lies. Once Tang Li knew she had thoughts of running away, she would never be able to leave the Tang clan again. If she agreed to wear this bracelet, how could she escape? She had already planned out her escape route to the black market, but Tang Li's thing had forced her to advance and retreat for 2 years. What should she do? Tang Li didn't rush her, but arched a brow at her and waited patiently. Cold eyes seemed to be mocking her schemes. Ning Jing looked at him with despair and resentment. She wanted nothing more than to pounce on him and bite him. Why did such a man exist in this world? Why did she meet him? Did she owe him a huge debt in her past life? If the person she met that day wasn't him, but a real cultivator, then everything would be different. Then she could always stay at Cloud Realm Trade Consortium and focus on doing business. She wouldn't have to be involved in so many schemes and intrigues. She wouldn't have to be involved in the conflict between the Eastern and Western Qin factions. Tang Li, she suddenly said angrily, as if she wanted to say something to him. I'm here. Tang Li said mildly. Ning Jing had a bellyful of words, but in the end, she forced them back down. No matter how sincere her words were, would he believe them? Even if he did, could she really be with him? Since she was young, she had fought for whatever she wanted. She dared to do whatever she wanted and never back down. If Tang Li wasn't from East Qin, then even if Tang Li didn't like her, she would still work hard to fight for him. But Tang Li wasn't only from East Qin, but also loyal and devoted. She couldn't fight for him even if she wanted to. She would run away from the D clan, but she would never betray them. In the end, her belly full of heartfelt words melted into a tender laugh. All right, help me put it on. From now on, you and I will be husband and wife, never leaving each other. So speaking, she added resolutely, we'll be together in our next life too. All right. Tang Li agreed gladly. He lowered his head and helped Ning Jing put on the bracelet, as if he was helping his wife put on a piece of jewelry. Ning Jing watched him with a cold smile in her heart. Never leaving each other. How could there be such a thing in this world? Cutting off one of her hands and not leaving each other would be a joke. Tang Li, let's be together in our next life. After putting on the jade bracelet, Ning Jing raised her hand to examine it and smiled. It looks pretty good. If you like it, I'll give it to you. Wear it all the time. Tang Li smiled back. Ning Jing became serious. Let's make this clear first. Once we get out of the black market, you'll take it off for me immediately. Tang Li did not answer her. He covered Ning Jing's face with a veil and said mildly, let's go. In order to hide her identity, Ning Jing did not bring Tang Li through the secret passage. She naturally had ways to disguise her identity and avoid detection. Actually, Tang Li also had many ways to enter the three-way black market, but he remained calm and collected. Just as they passed through the last checkpoint, Tang Li discreetly gave the gatekeeper a look, but Ning Jing did not notice. As the night deepened, the black market became livelier, especially the auction house and gambling house. After Tang Li and Ning Jing passed through the checkpoint, Ning Jing led him to the nearest gambling house. Tang Li could tell at a glance that this gambling house belonged to Myriad Merchant Hall. Just as the silence was drowned out by the crowd, Tang Li whispered, "Are we going to the treasury now?" "Of course." This is the busiest time for Myriad Merchant Hall, so it's the best time. I know of a secret passage. When we get there, help me deal with those guards. Once we get what we need, we'll leave through the secret passage. Ning Jing whispered. Ahead of them was Myriad Merchant Hall's busiest gambling house. Once they were inside, she would sever her hand when Tang Li was not paying attention and create chaos to escape. There was a secret passage in this gambling house that led to Myriad Merchant Hall's private passage. She would be safe as long as she escaped into the secret passage. With Myriad Merchant Hall's guards around, Tang Li would not be able to enter. Ning Cheng was in the army anyway. With her current status, she still had some say in Myriad Merchant Hall. Those guards would definitely not dare to block her way. She could just make up an excuse to leave when the time came. Once the matter was exposed, Ning Cheng would not be able to interrogate these guards even if he came back. Ning Jing was definitely a businesswoman. In her opinion, it was worth it to exchange a hand for the child in her womb and her own freedom. Gradually, the two of them were drowned in the crowd. There were people all around them, and it was extremely crowded. Tang Li lowered his eyes, his expression complicated. As they walked, he suddenly reached out and pulled Ning Jing into his arms to protect her from being bumped into. He hugged her a little tightly and said in a low voice, "You'd better be good. Don't play any tricks." "You're thinking too much," Ning Jing said mildly. She was paying attention to the gamblers around them. Gamblers had many taboos. Being disturbed when placing a bet was one of the most taboo things. As long as she found a slightly more aggressive person and crashed into him, it was guaranteed that the whole place would be in an uproar in the time it took to brew a cup of tea. Soon, Ning Jing set her eyes on a well-built man in luxurious clothes. She glanced at the chips on the table and saw that there were not many left. Without a doubt, this man had lost a lot of money. People who lost money had a fiery temper. They were just worrying about where to vent their anger. As long as she crashed into him, gradually, they were getting closer and closer to the man. At this moment, someone suddenly squeezed over from the right. "Be careful!" Tang Li exclaimed. He hurriedly protected Ning Jing and moved to the side to avoid it. "You didn't get hit, right?" Tang Li asked. I'm fine," Ning Jing replied mildly. Actually, even if she had been hit, it would not have been a big deal. That person's movements were not big. The two of them had already fallen out. Why did he have to protect her like this? Ning Jing realized that she suddenly missed Tang Li's embrace. After today, she was afraid that she would never be able to be hugged and protected by him like she was now. She only needed to raise her head and she would be able to see his immortal-like handsome face. Step by step, they moved forward in the crowd. Seeing that they were about to reach their target, Ning Jing still did not make a move. In the end, they walked past their target and nothing happened. Ning Jing soon steeled her heart to look for her second target. Unfortunately, the opportunity was right in front of her, but she still missed it. She then looked for a third and fourth target. Still, she could not make a move. Most of the time, a hug was enough to make people reluctant to part with it for the rest of their lives. If they went any further, they'd reach the secret passageway. Ning Jing had no choice but to make a choice. She'd set her sights on the fifth target and was about to struggle out of Tang Li's embrace when a familiar face entered her field of vision. This person was wearing a bronze mask that only covered his mouth and nose like a mask. His eyes were deep and his gaze was cold and arrogant. Ning Jing, who had always been calm, suddenly trembled. This was because this person was none other than her own brother, the master of Myriad Merchant Hall, Ning Ching. Chapter 885. Ning Cheng. Ning Jing never expected to run into Ning Ching here. Shouldn't he be in the army camp? Although Ning Cheng was the master of Myriad Merchant Hall, he rarely interfered with business matters after Tianning's civil unrest. What was he doing here at a time like this? Ning Jing only knew that Eastern and Western Qin had stopped fighting, but she didn't know the details. Nor did she know that Han Yunxi had already returned to Long Feiye's side. Her second thought was whether Han Yunxi had come with Ning Qing. Actually, there was one thing she couldn't figure out. Han Yunxi must have long known about the relationship between the Tang clan and Long Feiye, but why didn't she tell Ning Qing? She had been waiting since she was brought back to the Tang clan, but when the elders of Cloud Realm Trade Consortium went to find Tang Li to negotiate, she was certain that Han Yunxi hadn't told Ning Qing the truth. As the princess of Western Qin, what kind of good intentions could Han Yunxi have? Ning Jing had her suspicions, but she couldn't care less when she couldn't even protect herself. She was flustered and didn't know what to do. Subconsciously, she lowered her head, afraid that Ning Qing would recognize her. But she quickly realized she was wrong. She was wearing a veil, while Tang Li wasn't covering his face. As soon as he recognized her, Ning Qing would be able to guess her identity. What to do? Ning Jing wanted to calm down and think of a solution. There had to be a way. But she couldn't calm down no matter what. Ning Qing was at three-way black market, which meant her plan had failed. She wouldn't be able to escape today. Once she left three-way black market, she'd never get another chance. Panic, gloom, fright, despair, and grievance flooded her heart. Ning Jing suddenly felt very tired and wanted to cry her heart out. What should she do? Although she had brothers and sisters, she had never relied on them since she was young. She had always been stubborn and strong. At this time, she suddenly wanted someone to rely on and tell her what to do. Her brother was right in front of her, and her husband was right beside her, but she couldn't rely on either of them. Ning Cheng had just finished inspecting the auction house and was about to go rest. However, when he passed by the casino, he unconsciously walked in. He had joined the army since he was a child, and the first thing he learned was to never fight a battle that he had no confidence in winning. The casinos in the three-way black market never played those card games. They only gambled on luck. Therefore, Ning Cheng didn't like the casinos here. He rarely even stepped in when he was patrolling. The reason why he came here today was because he was feeling depressed and had nowhere to vent. Would a gamble make his mood better? Only the D clan and the upper echelons of Cloud Realm Trade Consortium knew that Han Yunxi had been taken hostage by Long Feiye. As for Han Yunxi's feelings for Long Feiye, he'd only told Uncle Qing about it. Ever since Han Yunxi left with Long Feiye, his heart had never been clear again. Bring out 30,000 chips, Ning Qing said coldly to Uncle Qing. Master, you've never stopped gambling, Uncle Qing reminded him in a low voice. I said, bring out 30,000 chips. Do I need to repeat myself a third time? Ning Qing said unhappily. Uncle Qing finally withdrew resentfully. Ning Cheng looked towards the crowd and caught sight of a familiar face. Tang Li. He muttered to himself. Uncle Qing brought over a chest of chips and followed Ning Cheng's gaze, spotting Tang Li as well. Tang Li was shielding a veiled woman in his arms as they made their way through the crowd. That can't be Miss Jing, can it? Uncle Qing was surprised. What's she covering her face for? Ning Qing immediately sensed that something was off. Ever since the relationship between the D clan and Cloud Realm Trade Consortium was made public, the D clan no longer had any secrets. Everyone knew that the three-way black market's 10,000 commerce hall belonged to the D clan. Naturally, Tang Li knew this as well, so Ning Jing had no reason to hide her identity. She hadn't used a private passageway, which was why she hadn't alerted anyone in 10,000 Commerce Hall. It was obvious she didn't want anyone to recognize her. Why was that? Uncle Ching was puzzled by Ning Cheng's words as well. That's strange. Could it be that Miss Jing only came here to play and didn't want to alert the people below? Ning Cheng's eyes flashed with shrewdness. He didn't understand the others, but he knew Ning Jing well. She valued money above all else and would never involve herself in gambling. If she hadn't been dragged here by Tang Li, there had to be something fishy going on here. Ning Jing thought it over for a while before lowering his head to whisper some instructions in Uncle Chang's ear. Then he turned and entered the secret passageway. Tang Li hadn't discovered Ning Jing yet, but Ning Jing knew that Ning Jing had already discovered them. She'd seen Ning Jing whispering to Uncle Ching. She wanted nothing more than to drag Tang Li away. Indeed, they were riding a tiger and couldn't get off. If she left immediately, with Ning Cheng's intelligence, he would definitely suspect her. The three-way black market and the three-way battlefield were all under Ning Cheng's influence. She and Tang Li couldn't escape. In her panic, her hand inadvertently touched her abdomen, and she couldn't take it away. She gently placed her hand on her abdomen, which was already showing signs of pregnancy, and suddenly calmed down. She suddenly realized that there was still one person in the world she could rely on and give her strength. This person was the little life in her abdomen, the trace that Tang Li had left for her, the only memory she could take away. As a mother, she was strong. After calming down, Ning Jing quickly sorted out her thoughts. Whether she had a chance to escape or not, she had to deal with Ning Jing first and dispel Ning Cheng's suspicion of her and Tang Li, otherwise, Tang Li would definitely die in the three-way black market. Thinking of this, Ning Jing suddenly grasped Tang Li's hand in fear. Tang Li didn't know how fragile the heart of the woman in his arms was. He whispered, "What are you doing?" Before Ning Jing could answer, a lean middle-aged man appeared out of nowhere. He grabbed Tang Li's hand and stuffed a handful of chips into it. Young master, I'm really unlucky tonight. It's obvious that this is your first time here. Please help me bet a few rounds to change my luck." Ning Jing could tell at a glance that this lean man was sent by Uncle Ching. He was an actor. But anyone who was hooked, no matter how strong their willpower was, would lose to the point that they would go bankrupt. Did Ning Ching want Tang Li to defeat the entire Tang sect? If Tang Li really defeated the Tang sect, she wouldn't have to worry about the hidden weapons anymore. However, this would definitely be a fatal blow to Tang Li. She couldn't imagine how dejected he would be when faced with such serious consequences. She couldn't imagine how he would be punished by Long Fei Yi. Ning Ching, you're so ruthless. If she removed her mask now and exposed her identity to help Tang Li, Ning Ching would definitely notice her abnormality. She could only remind him secretly. Actually, even without Ning Jing's reminder, Tang Li could tell at a glance that this lean man was an actor. Ning Jing's reminder comforted him. He readily agreed to the lean man's request. "Okay, I'll change your luck for free. Which table?" "Let's go." A glint flashed across the lean man's eyes, and he quickly led the way. Ning Jing was anxious. She scratched Tang Li's palm with all her might. Tang Li let her scratch him, and a happy smile unconsciously appeared at the corner of his mouth. He didn't even notice it. Finally, Ning Jing couldn't help but whisper, "Tang Li, this is a trap. I just saw Ning Ching. He recognized us." Tang Li also whispered, my Jingjing's heart is finally on my side this time." Her reminder meant that she really came to the black market to steal money, and she didn't lie to him. I. Ning Jing suddenly didn't know how to explain herself, so she decided to let Tang Li misunderstand her until the end. She muttered, "You can't win. They'll always cheat when they're brought in to gamble. Tang Li, stop gambling after a few rounds. Just tell the dealer that you're the clan master of the Tang sect and want to see the manager. I'll put on a show and persuade you to continue gambling, lest Ningqing suspects me. Tang Li lowered his head to look at her and suddenly smiled. Ever since he left Medical City, he hadn't smiled so brightly. He said, Jingjing, since you didn't lie to me, I'll help you win back what you deserve. Let's not steal from the treasury tonight. Tang Li. You can't win. They're all cheaters. Ningjing anxiously stomped on his foot. Let's make a bet. Tang Li chuckled softly. If I lose, I'll let you go. If I win. Tang Li thought for a moment, then leaned over and whispered in her ear, when we get back your personal seal, you'll go back to the Tang sect and give birth to my baby, okay? With a baby, it would be much easier for him and his mother to stand their ground and protect her life. Ningjing's eyes were red, but her voice was still cold. I don't have the right to be pregnant with your child, and I don't want to be pregnant with your child. I'm telling you, if you don't listen to me today, don't blame me for not warning you if anything happens. Tang Li smiled cold and didn't answer. Soon, they were brought to a large gambling table by the lean man. Ningjing recognized the dealer at the table as Uncle Qing at a glance. She was almost desperate. Under the gaze of Uncle Cheng's hawk-like sharp eyes, she didn't even dare to whisper to Tang Li. What should I do? Tang Li, this idiot, how could he escape from Uncle Cheng's trap? This is... Uncle Qing asked with a smile. This is my friend. Hee, help me play a few rounds. If I lose, it's on me, and if I win, it's on him, the lean man quickly replied. Hee, as long as it's agreed. Uncle Qing nodded and began to shuffle the cards. This table was finished with big or small bets, and the winner would be decided when the cards were opened. Tang Li didn't say anything. He played with the limited chips in his hand while quietly watching Uncle Qing shuffle the cards. It had to be said that Ningqing and Ningjing didn't know Tang Li very well. As the young master of the Tang sect, he was good at eating, drinking, and gambling. The only thing he lacked was prostitutes. When he was 13 years old, he secretly went to the casino with the Tang sect's guards and lost for 5 years. Since he was 17 years old, he had never lost again, not for any other reason but because he was a master of cheating. Uncle Cheng's every move couldn't escape his eyes. Until dawn, Tang Li didn't leave the gambling table. At first, he won and lost, but later on, he kept winning and winning. His bets were getting bigger and bigger, and it seemed that he was starting to go crazy. Ningjing was too familiar with this kind of trick. Uncle Qing would let Tang Li continue to win and go crazy. Only a truly crazy person would bet all his assets. Ningqing had been secretly watching. It was only when Gu urged him that he, Gu, and Mu Ling went to explore the Black Tower. At this time, Long Fei Yi, who was still on the road, had already received a secret letter from the guard at the gate. He knew that Tang Li and Ningjing had gone to the black market. Why did he bring Ningjing there? Long Fei Yi couldn't figure it out. Although Tang Li was easily annoyed, he wasn't addicted to it. He wouldn't send Ningjing to the three-way black market at this juncture. After all, Myriad Merchant Hall was the Ning clan's territory. Let's not go into the city tonight. This place shouldn't be far from the three-way black market. Let's hurry and go take a look. Han Yunxi said seriously. She was afraid that Long Fei Yi wouldn't agree, so she patted her leg. It'll be fine as long as I change my bandages on time. Food won't help much. Long Fei Yi finally agreed. He said, if we're fast, we can reach in 5 days and nights. We'll rest at the three-way black market. It's not far from the Black Tower. Han Yunxi hadn't seen Tang Li for a long time. She missed him. What would that brat's reaction be if he saw her and Long Fei sticking together? Chapter 886. Long Fei Yi and Han Yunxi were still on their way, while Gu and Ning Qing were already investigating Black Tower. According to Bai Yuqiao, Black Tower was Bai Yanqing's base of operations near the three-way battlefield. Su Xiaoyu wasn't imprisoned here at first, but was transferred here later. Because Black Tower was hidden, there weren't many guards, only a few poison experts. Bai Yuqiao promised that she could deal with these poison experts and cooperate with them to lure Bai Yanqing over. However, Ning Qing and Gu didn't dare to believe her easily. The two of them inquired and found that Bai Yuqiao wasn't lying to them. Black Tower's defenses were indeed not many. As soon as they returned to the three-way black market, they ordered someone to bring Bai Yuqiao up. "Why did your master imprison Su Xiaoyu?" Ning Qing asked coldly. A complicated look flashed past Bai Yuqiao's eyes as she answered, "Master heard that Han Yunxi treats her subordinates very well, especially Su Xiaoyu. She practically treats her like a younger sister. I reckon that master kidnapped Su Xiaoyu to threaten Han Yunxi." As soon as she said this, Ning Qing and Gu both laughed out loud at the same time, as if they had heard the funniest joke in the world. However, the two of them didn't laugh for long. Seeing that the other party was also laughing, they stopped at the same time. It made the two of them feel a little awkward, and they avoided each other's gaze. Bai Yuqiao's heart, liver, spleen, lungs, and kidneys trembled from their laughter. One had to know that Gu's laughter was already terrifying enough, and with Ning Cheng's addition, it was simply unbearable. After Ning Qing and Gu stopped at the same time, they both fell silent. They both waited for the other to speak first, afraid that they would bump into each other and embarrass themselves. Gu Qishao silently cursed to himself. "I've seen ghosts." Ning Cheng's face was as cold as ice. After waiting for a moment, seeing that Gu didn't intend to speak, he coughed a few times. Hearing Ning Cheng's light cough, Gu knew that Ning Qing wanted to speak, so he didn't say anything. Was this another kind of tacit understanding? For some reason, Gu suddenly thought of Long Fei Yi. The feeling of getting along with Ning Qing was very similar to getting along with Long Fei Yi. But compared to Ning Qing, Gu Qishao preferred to go against Long Fei. The man was too much of a challenge for him. "Bai Yuqiao, do you think I'm an idiot? Or do you think your master is an idiot? Su Xiaoyu is just a servant girl. She's not Gu Beiyue. How can Bai Yuqiao use her to threaten Han Yunxi? Speak." Ning Qing questioned cold. No matter how good Han Yunxi was to her subordinates, she wouldn't let a servant girl affect the overall situation and be threatened by Bai Yanqing. Bai Yanqing must have a deep reason for imprisoning Su Xiaoyu. Gu rubbed his chin and asked seriously, "Bai Yuqiao, do you think your master is an idiot, or is Ning Qing the idiot?" Ning Cheng's face darkened. He was about to explode when Gu walked to Bai Yuqiao's side and squatted down. He lifted her chin with interest and asked with a chuckle, "Or do you think my poison lass is an idiot?" Bai Yuqiao's face was already disfigured. She knew very well how scary and ruthless Gu's smile was. If Ning Qing was the one interrogating her, she would have a chance to use poison and escape. However, Ning Qing wasn't stupid. He would always drag Gu into the interrogation. The poison techniques she had learned from her master for so many years were completely useless in front of Gu. Because of the perplexing butterfly illusion, Bai Yuqiao immediately compromised. She had originally wanted to save her last bargaining chip to target Ning Qing and Gu. However, it seemed that she wouldn't be able to do so now. When she said this, Ning Qing and Gu's expressions changed. They looked at each other at the same time. Whoever had the perplexing butterfly illusion would have the world. Ning Qing had heard of this legend before. As for Gu, he had been searching for a way to break the perplexing butterfly illusion for the past 2 years. Ning Qing was about to speak, but Gu beat him to it. He asked coldly, "How did your master know that Su Xiaoyu knows the whereabouts of the perplexing butterfly illusion?" When he heard this, Ning Qing fell silent. Was the perplexing butterfly illusion really in Han Yunxi's hands? Han Yunxi had never mentioned it to him. She was now with Long Fei Yi. Could the perplexing butterfly illusion have fallen into Long Fei Yi's hands? Master said that Su Xiaoyu and Bailey Mingxiang are the same. They are both Han Yunxi's personal maidservants. Moreover, they both learned poison arts from Han Yunxi. Therefore, Su Xiaoyu might know about it. Bai Yuqiao hurriedly replied. A trace of craftiness flashed through Gu's eyes. He asked, like Bailey Mingxiang. Could it be that he also suspects Bailey Mingxiang? Gu was very close. Bai Yuqiao was so scared that he didn't dare to hide anything. Yes, yes. Ha! Gu laughed. Who are you trying to fool? You think you can be sure just by learning poison arts? Bailey Mingxiang is one of Long Fei Ye's people, not Han Yunxi's. This young master has been with Han Yunxi for so long. How could I not know that she has the perplexing butterfly illusion? Let me tell you, if you don't tell me the truth, it won't be as simple as just disfiguring your face. Bai Yuqiao was scared out of his wits. He hurriedly explained, Actually, Master isn't suspecting Han Yunxi. He should be suspecting Long Fei Yi because Bailey Mingxiang's blood is very strange. It's very likely that it can break the perplexing butterfly illusion. Gu was overjoyed. This was exactly what he wanted to hear from Bai Yuqiao. Qi brother, Tang Li. Tang Li couldn't have been tricked into coming here, right? Myriad Merchant Hall belongs to Ning Jing's family, right? Gu cocked his head at her. What's that got to do with you? Mu Ling gave a start, unable to answer. They weren't very clear on the relationship between the Tang clan and Long Fei Yi, much less the relationship between the Tang clan and Cloud Realm Trade Consortium by marriage. Mu Ling couldn't figure it out, while Gu had no interest at all. Mu Ling didn't even know how to answer before he left without looking back. Don't meddle in other people's business at a time like this. Ning Cheng's absence lasted for days, but Gu didn't look for him. He asked for a large sum of chips from Myriad Merchant Hall and brought Mu Ling to the gambling house next door to Tang Li's. He squandered money like it was dirt, but secretly dug a deep trap for Ning Qing. Mu Linger was in a daze as she followed Gu Qishao around the gambling tables. She was so happy that she almost forgot the purpose of their trip. Over the next few days, Tang Li spent all day and night at the gambling tables. He won for an entire day and night, then generously gave all his chips to the skinny man while he took out his own silver to buy a pile of chips to keep playing. He even dragged Ning Jing to bet with him. He continued to win for 2 days and 2 nights. But from the 4th day onward, he kept losing. The more he lost, the bigger his bets. Within a single day, he lost all his winnings from the previous 2 days, along with quite a bit of silver. By the evening of the 5th day, he'd lost all his valuables except for a single chip worth 1 tael of silver. He angrily slammed the chip on the table. This old man doesn't believe I can't win it back. Ning Jing glanced at his haggard face and felt her heart break. She really wanted to persuade him. Ollie, you said you would win. If you won, you would bring me back to the Tang sect to have children. Unfortunately, she couldn't persuade him. These days, she didn't persuade Tang Li to raise his bets. Uncle Ching had already looked at her with questioning eyes more than once. What should she do? Ning Jing had never felt so helpless since she'd started to understand things and lived stubbornly until now. I'll bet on small. Tang Li hollered as he threw out his last chip. Uncle Ching smiled. Sir, how much can you win with one chip? I think your wife's bracelet is very beautiful. Why don't you use it to bet? How about exchanging it for 30 chips? Tang Li's bracelet was hidden in his sleeve. The thin line couldn't be seen by outsiders, but Ning Jing's bracelet was like a piece of jewelry. Ning Jing never liked to wear things. The only valuable thing she had on her was this bracelet. Uncle Ching didn't see through the trick. He just wanted to empty their valuables and force Tang Li into a corner. Ning Jing hated this bracelet so much. At this moment, she was especially afraid that Tang Li would lose his last shred of rationality. She couldn't help but secretly hold his hand under the table. Tang Li hesitated for a moment and chuckled. That's a gift from me to my wife. I won't exchange it even if I die. Let's play with one chip slowly. Ning Jing's hanging heart finally settled down. She knew that he wasn't telling the truth, but she was inexplicably touched. Uncle Ching wasn't in a hurry. He let Tang Li win a few more rounds. Tang Li became excited again when he won. In the noisy casino, his shouts were the loudest. At this moment, Long Fei Yi and Han Yunxi had arrived at three-way black market. Chapter 887. Through a private passageway, they entered the heart of the three-way black market without any obstructions. Han Yunxi realized that Long Fei Yi had quite a bit of influence here. When she saw the words East Origin Hall, she couldn't help but mutter to herself, "Purple Chi from the East." She sat in her wheelchair and looked back at Long Fei in astonishment. Long Fei smoothed out her bangs and didn't say a word as he personally pushed her inside. Very soon, Han Yunxi saw that the two sides were filled with servants. All of them were bowing respectfully and didn't even dare to raise their heads. If Han Yunxi still couldn't see the truth, then she'd be an idiot. Today, she finally had an answer to the question she'd never been able to figure out. Long Fei Yi had never taken money from Tianning's imperial clan or enjoyed an official salary from the court. Moreover, the rewards he'd received after the previous emperor's death were very limited. How could he have so many properties in the wealthiest Jiangnan? How could he have so many gold cards in his hands? Why was he always so extravagant when he gave her gifts? As it turned out, the reason lay in this East Origin Hall. Ever since the grain scandal in Tianning's black markets, Han Yunxi had done her research on the three-way black market. Of course she'd heard of East Origin Hall's prestige. East Origin Hall's wealth in the three-way black market had long surpassed Myriad Merchant Hall, who'd been in charge of the market for many years. But she never would have guessed that Long Fei Yi was the master of East Origin Hall. Now it looked like Long Fei Yi was the richest man in both public and private assets. Han Yunxi couldn't help but turn back to look at Long Fei Yi. "What are you looking at?" Long Fei Yi asked mildly. "Why didn't you tell me you were so rich?" Han Yunxi asked with a smile. "I forgot." Han Yunxi was left speechless by Long Fei Yi's reply. "Are you afraid that I'm greedy for your money and don't really like you?" Han Yunxi asked jokingly. Long Fei Yi only ignored Han Yunxi's jokes. He retorted, "Then are you greedy?" "Yes." Han Yunxi nodded immediately. Without another word, Long Fei Yi took out a key from his sleeve and handed it to Han Yunxi. "For you." On the side, Su Donglin and Bailey Mingxiang were both stunned. Long His Highness doted on the princess, but they never expected him to spoil her so much. That key was the key to the East Origin Palace's treasury. Before the East Qin Empire was restored, the East Origin Palace's treasury was equivalent to the East Qin Empire's national treasury. Over the years, besides the limited subsidies the Tianning court gave to the Bailey Navy, all of East Qin's expenses came from this treasury. Su Donglin immediately thought of Tang Zijin, Aunt Ru, and General Bailey's stern faces. If they knew of His Highness's actions, who knew what their expressions would look like? Bailey Mingxiang looked at His Highness's tall figure from behind, his heart filled with complicated feelings. When they first met, he never expected that the cold and detached man could dote on a woman so unconditionally. Long Fei Yi had long pushed Han Yunxi away. Han Yunxi looked at the key and asked in a low voice, "Is it from the treasury?" "It's from the treasury." "Keep it well," Long Fei Yi said lightly, as if he was just chatting idly. Han Yunxi was scared out of her wits and quickly returned the key to him. "I don't want it. That's East Qin's treasury." She was already scared witless by the East Qin imperial jade seal, much less the treasury key. If something happened to the treasury one day, the old officials of East Qin would all blame it on her. "Aren't you greedy?" Long Fei Yi arched a brow as he asked. "Greed is justified. I can't take this thing." "Keep it well," Han Yunxi said seriously. The East Qin imperial jade seal was only being entrusted to her. She would have to return it to him after the Wind clan's troubles were taken care of. So what if she had the treasury key? The things in the treasury weren't hers, so she didn't have a proper title. Han Yunxi said seriously, "Long Fei Yi, I'll take your personal things, no matter how valuable they are. I don't have the right to take East Qin's things." Long Fei Yi didn't think too much about it. If Han Yunxi liked it, he would give it to her. It seemed like it had already become a habit. With Han Yunxi's reminder, he understood her misgivings. Although the East Origin Palace was a property left to him by the East Qin imperial family, ever since he took over the East Origin Palace, the East Origin Palace's assets had multiplied by 10 times. As long as he was willing, he could turn public property into private property in just a few days. In reality, public property and private property were the same to him. Seeing that Han Yunxi minded, he didn't explain. He took back the key and calmly said, "You'll have the right. You can owe me for now." Han Yunxi turned around and couldn't help feeling a little sad. Unless the enmity between East and West Qin was a misunderstanding and could be resolved, how could she have the right? Actually, she wasn't greedy at all. She had his body and his heart. What else in this world could arouse her greed? The East Origin Palace's exterior was simple and low-key, but its interior was extremely luxurious. It didn't pale in comparison to the high-profile Myriad Merchant Hall. Long Fei Yi brought Han Yunxi to his sleeping quarters. This palace was hidden in the quietest and most secluded part of the East Origin Palace. No one could disturb it. As soon as she saw the hot spring behind the sleeping quarters, Han Yunxi really wanted to soak in it comfortably. Unfortunately, her legs couldn't be soaked in water. The two of them tidied up and washed away the fatigue of the journey. Long Fei Yi punctually helped Han Yunxi change her medicine. In half a month's time, under Long Fei Yi's meticulous care and the effects of various medicines from Medical City and Medicine City, Han Yunxi's legs recovered much faster than usual. She could already stand up, but she still couldn't walk. Of course, Long Fei Yi absolutely didn't allow her to stand. If she continued like this, she could basically recover in another half a month. After a few days of training, she could walk normally. Fortunately, they had been on the move these days. Otherwise, with Han Yunxi's temperament, she really wouldn't be able to sit still. Han Yunxi changed into a loose dress and sat on the couch. When she saw Long Fei Yi coming over with the ointment, she hurriedly lifted the corner of her dress up to her knees. She knew that if she let him help her, she wouldn't be able to bear the consequences. Even with her knee exposed, her injured calf still made one's mind wander. Along the way, Long Fei Yi had already pounced on her countless times after helping her apply the ointment. He transformed into a wolf and devoured her clean. It had to be said that before he transformed into a wolf, Long Fei Yi was still very composed. He was always focused on changing the ointment. Even when Han Yunxi spoke to him, he would always give concise and comprehensive answers. Tonight, it was destined that he wouldn't have the chance to pounce on her. Because just as Long Fei Yi finished bandaging Han Yunxi's wounds, Su Donglin's voice came from outside. "Your Highness, there's a situation at Black Tower." "Come in," said Long Fei Yi as he walked to the outer room. As soon as Su Donglin entered, he reported, "Last night, we used a diversion tactic. The Shadow Guard has already spoken with Su Xiaoyu. Everything has been properly arranged." Long Fei Yi was very satisfied. "Begin the deployment immediately. This prince will wait for the heir to come." "Yes." Su Donglin added. Su Xiaoyu asked the Shadow Guard to pass a message to Princess. She said that she, Mrs. Princess. When Han Yunxi heard this from inside the inner room, her eyes suddenly turned red. It wasn't that she was being unreasonable, but that she understood Su Xiaoyu's temper too well. Such a stubborn and unreasonable little girl would never say anything emotional. Not to mention being emotional, she would even scold them for being unreasonable. For her to say this, she must have suffered a lot. Even if Long Fei Yi had set up a flawless ambush, it was still very dangerous this time. Han Yunxi thought that no matter what, they had to do their best to ensure little Yu's safety. In actual fact, Su Donglin didn't tell the truth. When the Shadow Guard sneaked into the Black Tower and saw Su Xiaoyu was already at her last breath. Whether she could hold on until they came to rescue her, no one could say for sure. In the Black Tower, there was a huge cross erected. The small Su Xiaoyu was tied to the cross with her head drooping. In the dim light, she was like an abandoned rag doll. Her entire body was emitting an aura of death. However, there was a stubborn light in her big eyes from beginning to end. Before the Shadow Guard sneaked in, she was already stubbornly holding on to her last breath. Moreover, the Shadow Guard had already sneaked in and passed on Master's orders. Her master was her savior. No matter what, she had to complete the task beautifully to repay her master. In the silence, a sudden gust of cold water was splashed over. Su Xiaoyu's entire body was drenched. The water flowed down her hair and her clothes, dripping onto the ground. The dripping sound was especially clear in the silence. This was the guard's old trick. After they had used all the extreme torture on her, there was nothing left for them to play with. Hence, they splashed her with cold water every night and opened all the windows to let the cold autumn wind dry her wet body. They made her so cold that she had a high fever and fell ill. They waited until her hands were tormented by the pain and she was about to die before they gave her medicine. In the past, every time, she would always lower her head and ignore them, letting them torment her. If she ignored them, they would lose interest and leave dispiritedly. If she ignored them, she would really be asking for trouble. However, this time, she raised her head and her lips curled into a sinister smile. "Hey, I'll give you a chance to perform a meritorious service, how about it?" When these words came out, the two guards' eyes lit up. "Stinky lass, why, you can't take it anymore. Are you going to confess?" "Cheap lass, wouldn't it have been fine if you had confessed earlier? Why did you have to suffer so much? You've even implicated us brothers to waste time with you." Su Xiaoyu sneered. "Confess? If I confess, will you still let me live?" The two guards had already seen Su Xiaoyu's shrewdness. They didn't want to waste time with her. Cheap lass, if you have something to say it quickly. Otherwise, hee. I think she's just playing with us. She won't cry until she sees the coffin. Men, bring me a whip. When they finished speaking, Su Xiaoyu said coldly, tell your master that if he wants to know whether the perplexing butterfly illusion is in Long Fei Ye's hands or Han Yunshi's, he'll have to come talk to me personally. If this great aunt is happy, I might even tell him how Long Fei Yi and Han Yunshi broke through the perplexing butterfly illusion. When these words came out, the two guards were shocked. They looked at each other and hurriedly ordered someone to keep an eye on Su Xiaoyu. Then, they hurriedly went to report this to their master. The perplexing butterfly illusion was a huge matter. Their master had been searching for the perplexing butterfly illusion for many years, but had never found any clues. Just as the guards were hurriedly delivering the letter to Bai Yanqing, Long Fei Yi, who was in charge of everything, was accompanying Han Yunshi to visit a casino. The two of them weren't visiting East Origin Hall's casino, but Myriad Merchant Hall's largest one. The masked woman beside him should be Ning Jing, right? Han Yunshi whispered. Long Fei Yi also whispered. He pushed Han Yunshi through the crowd and approached the gambling table where Tang Li was. Although this gambling table had become the focus of the entire three-way black market, most people still gathered around to watch. They did not dare to sit at the table. Occasionally, someone would throw in some chips to rub off on Tang Li's luck. After all, Tang Li's luck was extremely good today, and he kept winning. Different gambling tables had different standards. The gambling table where Tang Li was at required that the first bet must not be less than 30 million chips. It was the gambling table with the highest starting point in the entire black market. If one wanted to get a seat and comfortably sit down to gamble, they would have to fork out 30 million silver. After all, this was not a small sum. Therefore, other than Tang Li, there were only 3 middle-aged men sitting at the large oval table. Long Fei Yi threw in 60 million chips at the beginning. He had 30 million chips, and Han Yunshi had 30 million chips. The two of them sat on the right side of Tang Li. Tang Li was so excited that he only glanced at them and did not recognize who they were. Long Fei Ye's eyes flashed with a touch of displeasure. Han Yunshi looked at Ning Jing with interest. She found that Ning Jing seemed to have gained a little weight. As the saying goes, the body grows fat when the heart is broad. Ning Jing was under house arrest, but she still gained weight. Was she broad enough, or was she confident enough to believe that she could turn the tables? Tang Li was doing well in the Tang sect. Why did he go to the Ning family's territory to gamble? Han Yunshi couldn't figure it out no matter how much she thought about it, so she naturally suspected Ning Jing. At this time, the dealer had already shuffled the cards and politely asked everyone to place their bets. Small. Still small. I'll bet 10 million. Tang Li slammed the table and stood up. If I don't play small, I'll write the word Tang upside down. For a moment, everyone's attention was on Tang Li. Han Yunshi rolled her eyes a few times. She could not tell that Tang Li was acting. This kid must have gone crazy from playing. At this moment, the dealer, Uncle Qing, gave Ning Jing a look. This was already the third time. Ning Jing could no longer ignore it. She sneered at Tang Li and said, "Since you're so sure, why don't you bet all your chips? What's the point of writing the word Tang upside down?" When Ning Jing said this, she secretly tugged at Tang Li. Tang Li knew that she was acting for the dealer, so he played along. "Fine, I'll bet all my chips." "Hee hee, if your husband wins, I'll buy you delicious food." Many of the women present burst into laughter. How could this rich man be so cute when he won so much money to buy delicious food? He must love his wife very much in private, right? For a moment, everyone's hearts were filled with admiration. If it were any other time, Han Yunxi would have laughed too. Tang Li always had his way of making women happy. However, at this time, she could not laugh. She was even more certain that Ning Jing had seduced Tang Li to this place. If she knew that Tang Li and Ning Jing were sincere to each other, she would know that there was another woman in this world who was in the same boat as her. Unfortunately, she did not know. She only knew that Ning Jing had schemed against Tang Li, and Tang Li had played along. The two of them had been secretly competing, and now, Tang Li had the absolute upper hand. Putting aside her identity as the princess of Western Qin, Han Yunxi would openly admit that she was biased and protective of Tang Li. She hoped that Tang Li could win this smokeless war between Tang Li and Ning Jing. Although Tang Li was sloppy, he was still very reliable when he was serious. He was worthy of a better woman. Boom! Tang Li suddenly pushed out all the chips in front of him and scattered them all over the table. He had won more than 50 million chips in one day. Ning Jing was shocked. She had secretly tugged at Tang Li's hand just now to remind him that she was just acting and not to listen to her. She did not expect Tang Li to be so willful. For a moment, the audience was in an uproar. Many people stopped what they were doing and came over to watch. Tang Li was staking everything on this one throw. If he lost, he would lose everything. There was a lot of discussion around them. The three middle-aged men at the table did not move and did not intend to follow. The people who were standing at the side also did not dare to act rashly. In this kind of situation, it was much more exciting to watch a show than to play by themselves. This master is really straightforward. Uncle Qing smiled. He was satisfied with Ning Jing's performance. He looked around and asked, "Is there anyone else who wants to bet?" Long Fei Yi was calm and collected. He pushed out 5 million chips and bet on small like Tang Li. Uncle Qing smiled politely at him and did not pay much attention. After all, there were too many people wearing masks in the venue. 5 million chips were nothing compared to Tang Li's chips. Tang Li glanced over and still did not take it to heart. Han Yunxi was no longer scolding Tang Li for being careless. Instead, she attributed it to her and Long Fei Ye's disguise being too good. "Not going to play?" Long Fei Ye whispered. "Not interested. I'll just watch." Although Han Yunxi liked to bet, she did not play this kind of gambling game that did not have any technical content and relied on luck and cheating. She thought that it would not be a loss to use 30 million chips to exchange for a seat and return it after watching the show. Long Fei Yi did not persuade her. The dealer asked around again and was about to open the dice bowl after making sure that no one was betting. At this moment, an extremely deep and sexy voice came from outside the crowd and attracted everyone's attention. "Wait, I want to bet." The voice was deliberately fake and could not be distinguished from the original voice. The crowd consciously opened up a path and saw a young man in black casually walking over. His black clothes were mysterious and low-key, but the mask on his face was extremely high-profile and showy. The mask was made of pure gold. Under the illumination of the lights, it was golden and especially bright. Compared to his high-profile appearance, the girl behind him was much more low-key. The girl was about 17 or 18 years old. She was dressed in a yellow robe and wore a white veil bamboo hat. Her entire head was covered and nothing could be seen. Han Yunxi, like everyone else, did not pay much attention to the yellow-robed girl. Her attention was on the black-clothed man's face. She wanted to go over and ask, "Sir, isn't the golden mask heavy? Tang Li saw that his limelight was stolen and was a little unhappy. The black-clothed man and the yellow-robed girl had just sat down when he impatiently urged, "Hurry up if you want to bet. Don't waste my time." The black-clothed man glanced at the chips that had been placed and asked, "How much is this pile?" "This Sir Tang bet over 50 million and this Sir Qin bet 5 million. After Uncle Ching finished explaining, he very professionally asked, "Sir, how much do the two of you want to bet?" The black-clothed man ignored Uncle Ching and looked at the three middle-aged men who did not bet. He chuckled and asked, "You guys don't want to play?" The three middle-aged men were all steady people. They were not easy to block and loved money. They would not be impulsive and would not show off their power. The three of them simultaneously shook their heads. One of them politely smiled and said, "We just played a few rounds. Take a break and enjoy yourselves." Who knew that the black-clothed man's face would immediately change? "If you don't want to play, then go to the side. Don't ruin my mood." As he spoke, he looked at Long Fei Yi and Han Yunxi and waved his hand disdainfully. 5 million. If you can't afford to play, then go to the side. Don't hinder me and this sir from washing 1,000 gold hall with blood." When these words came out, Uncle Cheng's face slightly changed. Ning Ching, who was hidden in the shadows, was even more displeased. Who else could this black-clothed man be other than Gu? Ning Ching had just arrived. He originally wanted to find Gu to discuss the matter of Black Tower and the operation tomorrow. Who knew that he would actually stroll over to Tang Li's side? He and Mu Linger each had 60 million chips. They did not buy them, but took them for free. He was having fun in the hall next door. Why did he come to 1,000 Gold Hall to join in the fun? "Master, do you want this subordinate to call Gu back?" the attendant asked in a low voice. "No need. Let's see what he wants to do first," Ning Ching said coldly. After these days of interaction, he more or less understood Gu's temper. Once that guy went, he would not be able to call him back. He still believed in Uncle Cheng's ability. He was not afraid of Gu causing trouble, nor was he afraid that he would win. If he rashly went over now, it would instead disturb Tang Li's mood. One must know that people who were immersed in the gambling table were most afraid of having their mood disturbed. Once disturbed, it would be very easy for them to wake up. If Gu went over, it might not be a bad thing. Perhaps it would make Tang Li even crazier. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.